Hello and welcome to the Double Bill Podcast, a podcast of two film lovers discussing two films. My name is Michael Smith and alongside me is Jacob Deering.
Hello, how's it going?
Jacob, this has been a long time coming, my friend. This is
absolutely.
We failed with one podcast in the past. We don't talk about that one. And we kind of just figured this one out to be our thing. And I was like, Jacob, I just want to talk movies. And it's like, we want to be able to talk for so long, and now we've kind of like doing this and we got our chance. So kind of like, I don't know, give yourself a little introduction, just who you are, man. Tell us a little bit.
My name is Jacob Deering. Me and Michael go way back about like 4 or 5 years. We made some movies together. We made some legendary lost films, which, you know, one day maybe resurrected. I don't know. But yeah, we have the long forgotten deceased podcast child, the older brother to Double Bill. His name was in my opinion, me and him, we did about 10 episodes with two other people. Some of our friends, Hayden Moore and Samantha Sampson.
You'll be seeing those two on here soon.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, you know, me and him, we're both we're filmmakers, we're writers, we're storytellers, we're everything movie centric. And I think that's what inspired us to do this podcast is our lives are movies. And so, you know, to have the opportunity just to dedicate a couple hours a day just to talk and listen and, you know, watch movies, I think that's what's going to make this podcast so fun, man.
Absolutely, man. I'm more of the saying, like, we met, you know, four years ago, I would assume,
at a movie theater.
Yeah, I worked at a movie theater for 5 years, and so did he. And we kind of just hit it off. I mean, I miss working there just simply because we had the free movies. We had the ability to go watch a movie in theaters for free before the movie came out or even after. It didn't matter. That was always cool to get the pre-screenings. But we just kind of like came together and was like, let's just make some films because we both want to make films. And so we kind of just found that connection, just always talk about movies constantly. So we created this podcast to pretty much promote movie watching and movie going for anybody that needs suggestions for what to watch and what to do. This is like who we are. This is what we're trying to do. We both love movies, and for both of us to get the opportunity to discuss and analyze some of our favorite movies. Most of the time we'll be choosing recent releases to pair with older films. But sometimes, and I guess a lot of times as well, you'll be getting things that, you know, from old movies, you know, that we pair together. It doesn't have to be recent releases, but to start off, we'll probably do recent releases. But this week, we'll start off a little easier for everyone. And hopefully the people that are listening to this podcast either know about these two movies or they don't. But hopefully you guys check it out after you listen or before you listen, and just listen to us. But this week we'll be talking about two of our favorite directors' recent films: Licorice Pizza by Paul Thomas Anderson, aka PTA, and Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Those will be the two films we discuss. Go over a little bit why we chose that for a second, Jacob.
I mean, I think that you touched on it with just saying that these are two of our favorite directors, Paul Thomas Anderson and Quentin Tarantino. I think that we've been studying and divulging into as long as we have been into film. And so to have the opportunity to have these directors who have by admission, they bounce off of each other, which with each release, sort of this friendly competitiveness, it makes it fun to talk about, especially, you know, from a critical standpoint. Paul Thomas Anderson, he followed Quentin Tarantino's late 1960s, 1969 Hollywood with 1970s San Fernando Valley in LA. Both of these movies, they're movies about just following people, the days in their, just, you know, a day in their life. You know, we take a minute just to walk in their shoes and explore what it means to be these characters, and simply for the sake of having fun. Yeah. Both of these movies, that everybody can agree once you watch them, at the end of the day, they're fun. You can sit down and you can watch them all day, every day, without it ever getting old.
Yeah, I always find myself whenever I watch these two movies, kind of just, you know, I never want to leave these characters. You know, I always like, it's very much character based rather than story based. These two movies, and I was just, especially more so Licorice Pizza for me. I just absolutely want to know more about these characters and follow them through. So I'm excited, man. Like,
Yeah, man.
once we get going and getting deep into it, man, it's going to be exciting. To kind of tell a little bit more about this podcast, we have a calendar for films to watch each week for the month. So each what we're going to do is watch 2 movies back to back, double feature, and we'll do our notes. We'll take our research and figure out what we find subjectively really cool about this movie, why we like it, why we didn't like it, or things like that, and figure out why they pair well together. And we'll do that for each week of the month. And then also we'll have emergency podcasts. You know, if a big movie comes out, we'll definitely do a nice little analyze over that big movie. I think the next big one is the Batman. As you can see with my shirt, I'm a little excited for that. And this month is a little bit of a theme for that. So after this episode with Once Upon a Time in Licorice Pizza, we're going to jump right into the Batman themes. You can check out the schedule with on our Instagram and Twitter, but we're going to be doing Taxi Driver, Zodiac, French Connection, Chinatown, and then also watching Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes, because those movies are the ones that kind of inspired as Matt Reeves has said, he said that those are kind of what inspired him. He said he listened to the Taxi Driver soundtrack while writing. So all of those movies are kind of going to lead us into the Batman to have a sense of what that movie is going to feel like. And then once we watch the movie, we're going to be ready to go. We're going to come talk on it. Emergency podcast. Here's what we thought about the Batman, and hopefully be able to find the parallels between all the movies that we watched. And then after that, we're going to jump into some more themes, and each month is just going to have a theme between our double features. But this week we'll stay focused on Once Upon a Time in Licorice Pizza. So yeah, the other movies, if you're excited for, hopefully we're going to have those out to you guys very soon. But before we get to those 2 movies, we definitely want to talk about, we're a podcast that is about movies. We want to talk about every episode what's going on in entertainment this week. So we call it our relevant news. So I think the one that, like, me and Jacob were like, hang on, let's not talk about that right now. Because we were getting into a nice little debate over what we thought about this over text message, and we were like, let's not talk about that right now. We have a podcast. Let's hold on for it. And I think for us, the biggest news was Blade Runner
2099, baby.
2099. Ridley Scott is bringing a sequel to 2049 to Amazon. And
this is Ridley Scott's. It's his full return to his prodigal son. I mean, whenever you think of sci-fi, especially dystopian, futuristic sci-fi, this is the godfather of that genre.
Yeah.
And it's well known that with the sequel, Blade Runner 2049, that was Denis Villeneuve's, project. That was his baby. And so for it to be a return back to Ridley Scott, I think it's about as interesting as it is, perplexing, especially with, Ridley Scott's recent discography with his films. I mean, I can kick it off. You can kick it off, Mike. But I mean, I think that we have very different opinions on Ridley Scott taking the helm once more.
Yeah. I mean, my thoughts on it. I mean, a little back. So I'm probably the biggest Blade Runner 2049 fan you might find. I've seen that movie countless times.
What's your Xbox gamer tag?
I mean,
it's a Blade Runner 2049 reference, man. That was the first.
Man, I haven't
that was
been
the
on
first
Xbox.
hint I got.
Yeah, I haven't been on Xbox in ages, but I think wasn't it like Mike Runner 2049?
I think that's what it was. I want to say it was Mike Runner 2049.
Yeah, I put 2049 at the end of like all my handles. My email has 2049 in it. A lot of things. 2049 is like, I have a lot of. I have the posters, I have toys, I have memorabilia, don't have a shirt. I do need a shirt for it, but I have the movie, I have everything that you could hope for from that movie. It blew me away whenever I first saw it. It was my favorite thing. And I always told Jacob and another friend of ours, I was like, I don't want a sequel. I don't think, unless Denis Villeneuve is like, yeah, I'm gonna do a sequel. I'm like, I don't want a sequel. It ended in such a perfect way to kind of like let that world grow in my mind. And I think a sequel may ruin that for me. Now, when this was announced last week, Ridley Scott's going to take over and it's going to be a series. That's a little different. And my thoughts on it are like, I have no issue with Ridley Scott doing it because, again, I mean, he had strong involvement in 2049. That's his baby, as well as Denis Villeneuve. My thing is just kind of like Ridley Scott. He is definitely a director that does whatever the fuck he wants. He can get he's an older guy. He's made the classics back in the day, Blade Runner, Alien, and Gladiator. He just lately has been hit or miss, and like this past year is kind of an example of that. I mean, you have The Last Duel and House of Gucci. I mean, The Last Duel has generally been considered amazing. House of Gucci has kind of been like, and it almost got shut out at the Oscars. And then years before that, I mean, Alien Covenant, Prometheus have been like, So to hear that he's going to be doing 2099, okay, but it's a series, so he'll have the ability to really take care of it. But my only caution is that I personally don't even think it will happen, at least for 5 years, because he's been working on an Alien series for ever.
Yeah,
we still haven't gotten it.
something that I've been saying. I think that this whole series, it came down to Dune's success. Something that I kept saying is I think that the speculation of whether or not Denis Villeneuve can do a successful blockbuster that it's as cerebral as it is enjoyable for general audiences to watch and get behind, then I think that can sort of set up hopes and promises for a Blade Runner future with the franchise. The Catch-22 is, in a way, I was right, but also with it being Ridley Scott's baby and Denis Villeneuve, as of right now, not really having any say or involvement in the matter, it also said I was wrong. And I think that there might not be as much correlation as I wanted there to be. But yeah, I think that the one thing that sort of goes down into this whole conversation is his consistency as a director, especially within the last 10 years. And I look at Ridley Scott's involvement in his sequels for the Alien franchise, specifically looking at Prometheus and Alien Covenant, two movies which he's directed, which Prometheus was fairly successful at the box office, but Alien Covenant, that bombed. And both were critical failures. I think Prometheus did a little bit better critically, but Alien Covenant, it was seen as an all-around failure. And I think just looking at his discography in this past decade, it's a hit or miss. He's a director that sort of he's toying with film conventions. I think that if you look at movies like The Martian and House of Gucci, those are more conventional movies with structure and style, being done stylistically. Though you have movies like The Last Duel and Prometheus, they try to break those conventions to do something different. With The Last Duel, he was successful in doing so, and he created something that I would consider, to be one of his masterpieces. I think it's going to be something that stands the test of time for his legacy moving forward as it sits with more audiences. Yeah. I know that maybe his statements on millennials and why it failed at the box office, it might have hindered that a little bit, but I mean, I enjoyed it very much, man. I love it. I think that he still has that prowess as a director, but whenever it comes to his franchises, I think that he needs to take careful, just caution whenever it comes to building the series, if it ever comes to fruition.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, The Last Duel, I think that it will go down as one of his better movies, especially in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
I think Gladiator was like his last, like, okay, this is almost a masterpiece. But everything after that has kind of been like mixed reactions, so much so that Gladiator is about to get a sequel.
Yeah.
I mean, A, I don't know who asked for that, but B, people will go see it, but it also might feel it's like Avatar. It's like 20 years too late at this point.
Yeah,
But we'll
people have already
just,
moved on, man. But
yeah, I'm like, the audience is different, but that's kind of why he made that dig at millennials and all of that, people like us. It's like, oh, they're on their phones, so they don't. I don't think that had anything to do with the box office. We'll definitely be
mhm,
talking about the box office later down the line, because I think that's a very huge thing to talk about, box office versus streaming and all that, and what matters. But something else, about relevant news that's been going on, speaking of the box office, has been the Oscars. Like, you've seen a lot of like famous people, Jimmy Kimmel, Kevin Smith, come out and say, why was Spider-Man No Way Home nominated? Why was it not nominated for Best Picture? It was the most seen movie. And they're like, oh, those 10 movies, guaranteed not many people have seen them.
yeah,
um
especially
yeah,
these diehard Marvel fans. I think that whenever you look at the box office and the domination, a lot of that it comes from Disney. And so people who are big fans of what Disney produces, whether it be Star Wars for the past 10 or past about like 8 to 10 years, and Marvel since 2011 2012, they have set up a business model where it's to keep people returning to these franchises and these characters, and they keep investment. But with that, to keep a long-term investment, you have to take away a lot of the risk, which makes cinema as impactful and meaningful as it is. The Oscars, it's about that risk. It's about being able to tell new stories that are innovative in format rather than fan service and convention, which is the Marvel standard. And that's not to you know talk down on it or say it's lesser of an art form. I just say it's apples to oranges. It's going back to Martin Scorsese's first critique of Marvel. It isn't that it's worse or it's less quality. It's that they're trying to achieve different things, and the Oscars is meant for the latter. It's not meant for what Disney or Marvel currently does.
yeah. I would I would I would argue that, back in the past, post Oscars So White and post Dark Knight, a lot of the Oscar movies that were nominated for Best Picture were quote unquote considered, big hits at the box office. They chose a lot of movies that a lot of people went to go see. And that was a huge thing because streaming wasn't a thing back then. People went to go see movies. A lot
Yeah,
of these movies that were nominated this year, West Side Story back in the day, a lot of people would have went to go see that. But nowadays, no
not
one.
a lot.
Nightmare Alley, a lot of people would have gone to go see that. Dune, a lot of people went. What a lot of people did go see it. It was just also on HBO Max, which kind of hurt it,
Mhm.
but not really. It was nominated for 10 Oscars. The Power of the Dog, that's something people would like. I think that streaming is something that causes a lot of these movies to, you know, not be seen, in my opinion. There's so many streaming services, so many things, but also the Oscars itself is changing. The voters are different. It's no longer just old white men voting. It's literally anybody. There's foreign people voting. That's why you're getting a foreign language film every year nominated for
Yeah,
Best Picture. In the past, the only thing foreign language was nominated for was foreign language film. That was it. Now it's being nominated and winning for Best
yeah.
Picture,
I
which
mean,
is,
Parasite changed the game along
yeah,
with Roma, both being foreign films that were able to take
yeah,
away wins. Um, I mean, yeah, the Oscar format is changing, especially with the 2020 Oscars. I believe that was not only the first Oscars for a streaming service to be able to take away a win, but for it to be nominated in general.
yeah,
Is something that you've just never seen before because streaming services, it wasn't seen as a viable option for quality filmmaking.
yeah.
And especially because of COVID, that is drastically changing. And that can also hinder what it means for films to be successful. Because whenever you look at streaming, one of the biggest, cons of that just format is how many options there are. you have hundreds to thousands of, films within a single streaming site to choose from, and it can be so overwhelming at once. I think that that's sort of what can sway people away from, what's newer and unfamiliar versus the familiar things that you would enjoy. And that's, again, it comes back into that Disney Marvel business model. I think it's very interesting. And I mean, we're starting to see these changes, especially with this year. The Oscars implemented the new fan favorites for fans to vote for what movie should get, recognition at the Oscars if it, was snubbed or it did not make,
Yeah, but
nomination.
I personally think that's just going to be like one of those things that they like say on the side, that'll get
Yeah,
recognized.
I don't
I
think it's a big thing. It's just it's to please
yeah,
those Spider-Man fans who are
I think I
PO'd.
think I think the biggest thing, is the problem is that last year that was the least watched Oscar show of all time, but not even Oscars. It was one of the least watched things on television
Yeah,
all year. It was those ratings are poor, and they've only been getting worse every year ever since politics have started to get bigger inside the Oscars, and Hollywood having a division from conservative to liberal. There's a mass like the ratings have gone down, and the fact that not many people have seen all these movies. So it's like you're watching the Oscars, and there's so much going on besides the acting categories that and the best pictures, that's all people care about, and the song.
yeah,
Beyonce's going to be there, Billie Eilish, like that'll bring some ratings, but and not having a host that hurts your ratings. I personally, people say that having a host doesn't really affect it, it's the movies. I think that having the host can affect it. I mean, you're talking about Kevin Hart hosting the Oscars a few years ago. People were excited and they got taken away, and ever since we haven't had a host. No one cares.
well,
There's no Yeah,
yesterday they released the three hosts for
yeah,
the Oscars.
we've got three hosts for the first time, which I'm like, I'm iffy on, but it is, it's a start. We'll just have to see,
It
it's
is. I also
I,
think it's an interesting choice.
yeah. I think more people are gonna watch this year, but I think that the ratings are still gonna be terrible. But honestly, I heard that the Academy is being paid by ABC money to have it on their channel
Mhm.
for a certain amount of time. Obviously, they have a contract. So the Academy isn't really pressured as of right now to change things, but soon, whenever that contract runs out, obviously things are going to have to change. But we'll just have to see with that. Yeah, and then we'll touch on this one a little bit lighter. The Super Bowl TV spots. I think a lot of people are excited about that Doctor Strange trailer. I think I flipped my shit whenever I heard
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart is gonna be in that, dude. I didn't know that that was a casting a long time ago, but apparently it got announced, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. I mean, it's been rumored. I think I can't count the amount of rumors for the cast list for Multiverse of Madness. I mean, looking specifically at this movie, the rumors are it's a lot of people who were originally in talks to star these famous characters that we've come to know and love, but didn't quite make the cut, either due to just issues or them wanting to go with the choices that we know now, are going to be returned or are going to make their debut as these characters as sort of just a one-off, just meta postmodern sort of look, and just to have sort of fun and be, I guess, just self-aware. To one big one that is rumored is Tom Cruise being Iron Man. um
Mm-mm.
I mean, dude, that is probably the equivalent to Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire for No Way Home. It's people are trying to find it. There's been some leaks. I've seen some set photos. I don't know much about it, honestly. I'm trying not to research it like I researched No Way Home. I want to
Yeah,
be pleasantly surprised.
a little bit more sad news. We learned 2 days ago that after the Super Bowl too, that the great Ivan Reitman passed away in his sleep at the age of 75. Um, that one, that that you know that just came as a shock.
Yeah.
because you're having a good time in the Super Bowl, and then you kind of just scroll through your phone and you see Ivan Reitman passes away, and you think it's fake, and it's like, what are you talking about? Ghostbusters just came out, and all this, and it's like the first thought I had was like, wow, that Jason Reitman Ghostbusters movie, no matter what anybody thinks about it, that Jason Reitman Ghostbusters movie just hits more
Yeah.
now. It's like, because he made that for his dad. Like he made that
Yeah.
as a transfer of, power and everything from his dad to him of this franchise. And Ivan Reitman, though I haven't seen many of his movies, a lot of his movies have stuck with me over time. I mean, especially Ghostbusters. Um,
Ghostbusters and Kindergarten Cop was, it
yeah,
was that for me. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. For me, with this film, a lot of people, they nagged on it for it being, too self-referential and playing on fan service. But I think that I I wouldn't consider it fan service for, this movie. It was a son paying homage to his father and his legacy. There was a
that's
certain
exactly what it
sense of,
was.
personal love from where it came from. And I think that honestly, I can't speak on much because I don't know his father's, state of health at the time. But I think that, you know as our parents get older and we know that we have less time with them, I think that this was just sort of, it was a way for him to be able to remember his father
Yeah.
and, to eventually say goodbye. And a few months later, it's exactly what happened. But I mean, you and me, we loved that movie whenever it first came out. I think it stuck with us because it was a fun blockbuster. It was exactly
Yeah.
what it was meant to be. And to know that the son of the original director took the you know took the reins, it made it that much more sweet.
Yeah. And I truly like, of the past year, that 2021, it was definitely one of my favorite movie theater experiences. It was funny. I think that when you watch that movie, it's like if you allow yourself to just sit back and enjoy it, you really feel Ivan Reitman's influence from the original film into this one on this movie. And it just makes it all the more, better, and I think the last Ivan Reitman movie that I actually like watched was No Strings Attached, and I love that he was an American treasure for making movies that we can just sit down and enjoy it with your
Yeah.
family, your friends, and absolutely just enjoy it. It's not meant to be looked at overly critical. It's meant to be enjoyment and entertainment. He gave that to us in all of his movies. And it was fantastic. Like each movie that he's ever had that I've seen have been absolutely a blast to watch, and I have fun with them. I've seen all of his, like the ones that I've seen
Yeah.
multiple times, not just once. It had an imprint on me because he found a way to enter into my home or in the theater and give me an enjoyment and a ride and just love these characters. And it
Yeah.
was fun. So rest
Over
in
s-
peace.
over several decades, from the 80s with Ghostbusters to even now in the present, he still had that presence with just, influencing our childhood. He's meant to, you know, his movies are meant to be where you can sit down and you can laugh with your family and your friends. And
Yeah.
he did exactly that. Jason Reitman, I think he did an excellent job at emulating that feeling and that sense of homeliness. And so, like you said, absolutely rest in peace, Ivan Reitman. Thank you for everything that you've done for cinema.
Yep. Rest in peace. We'll go, and on that note, we'll take a quick pause to kind of like, get that moment of silence for him, and we'll be right back. So thank you guys for listening. We'll get right back into Licorice Pizza and Once Upon a Time. All righty, guys, we're back. Let's dive into it. Our double feature for the week: Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Licorice Pizza. Let's go ahead and start off. Let's just jump right into it for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So we're just going to talk
Perfect.
about each movie, back to back, and just talk about it. So please enjoy. Jacob, you are a massive fan of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I don't know what you mean.
Talk to me.
I don't
I
got the
see. I
poster in the
see.
background.
I see it in the background. Nice
I got
little
the
backdrop.
I got the poster and I got the limited edition Blu-ray.
Yeah,
Comes with the I just gotta show this off to everybody because I
I
love it so
know.
much. Comes with a record player. It's a good thing, and then it's also bring a little loving.
Love that.
Yeah,
Love it.
this movie, man. I love this movie. I love this movie so much. I remember I want to talk about my experience before we really dive into the movie. I remember I'll pick that up later. Um
There
I
goes
re-
its background.
I remember with this movie, you and me, we tried to watch it unsuccessfully whenever the keys unlocked at our movie theater that we worked at the time. Um excuse me. And I remember that there's a problem with it being ingested and we were unable to watch the movie. And I think that it was about either a day later or two where I was able to watch it for the first time. And this was one of the first movies that I saw in theaters. So I just sat down and I kicked back for the ride and I never wanted it to stop. It was like whenever it ended, I felt genuinely sad uh that I had to get up and go home. And then I think I saw it like 2 or 3 days later at Angelica. It's a local theater in Dallas, and I saw it on 35 millimeter print. And that was my first film, but I saw on film print, and it was. I mean, it really felt like it was an experience for me once more, just because I got to sat down. I got to sit down and watch it like some of my favorite directors did on a film projector rather than digital. It it was amazing. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it is his most self-referential film. He constantly calls back to Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Glorious Bastards, and it's his conclusive film. I mean, to Tarantino's own admission, I think that this film it was this is the film where he was able to stick the landing for his legacy and define who he is as a director. This is sort of like he's got allegedly one more movie coming up, but for him, like, this could be his last movie. Like, he could call it quits, say he's done, and leave it at this, and people would be very sad, but they'd be satisfied. This film, whenever I watched it probably about 7 times. Um, I watched it a lot, man. But I mean, it's so obvious that for Tarantino, it's such a personal film. It's a journey of self-discovery and reflection on his own career. More so with just criticism that he's faced. I mean, Tarantino, he is no stranger to criticism as a director. He's abrasive, he's vulgar, and he's unapologetic with his filmmaking. And he's self-aware with that. He's self-aware with what people had to say about him, whether it be positive or whether it be negative, and he sort of represents that through his characters. I think that whenever we look at Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Rick Dalton, it's it's sort of his insecurities as a director and a storyteller. So Rick Dalton, he's based loosely off of Ty Hardin. So he's worked on many American westerns. His most famous is Bronco, and then his career started taking a downward spiral where he wasn't able to get as much work, and he ended up going to spaghetti westerns like Holy Water Joe and Death on the Run. Um, but for Rick Dalton, it's insecurity. It's somebody who is unable to change with the times, and he wants his success to be defined by outward opinion. He wants to be able to gauge with the critics and you know mold into that success, because to him, how people think about him defines who he is as a person. And this relates to, I think, amateur film buffs and many critics bashing on Tarantino's contributions to cinema, often calling him a hack and his films lacking substance. And that relates to Rick Dalton's character, with how many of his films, they haven't met that acclaim that he wanted to. And even then, you look at Tarantino's older films like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and people wish that he stuck on that route instead of going into different period pieces with, Django Unchained and Inglorious Bastards, and sort of, molding his career in a different manner than what he initially started as, always trying to do different things. And, we see that whenever Rick Dalton quits Bounty Law, is show that he's known for, and it hurts his career. While that might not be the case for, Tarantino himself, it still plays into that insecurity and that outward criticism. I mean, before I go into a little bit more, I just want to ask you, I mean, like, what was your takeaways when you first watched this film?
Yeah. I didn't. The first time I saw it, I didn't like it. Uh, I think it's because I had watched all of Tarantino's movies beforehand, and I tend to do that whenever a new director has a movie out. I tend to watch all of his movies or her movies at before the new one comes out. So I had watched all of his movies beforehand, and it was a common way that his movies were structured. They were all nonlinear. They all told stories. When this one definitely goes nonlinear as well. They were all nonlinear, and it was all leading to one thing, and it was this massive buildup to this massive bloodbath in each and every one of his movies. And you felt the tension, you felt it. I didn't feel it that much in Hateful Eight, but you felt it. And so I went into this movie with that same mindset. I had no like prior knowledge of the film. I just knew that it was set in 1969 around the Manson murders. And that was like my preconceived notion of what this film would be about. That is not what you get. That is not what this film is. And I didn't know that until, about a year ago. I'd only watched it once, maybe twice in theaters, before I rewatched it, about a week or two ago, with some different knowledge. I think that the movie has, I think that I was not in the minority. I think there was very much split 50-50, the initial reaction of this film, because it is one of those things that's like, either what's going on, you either know what he's trying to do or you don't. And that's the thing. It's like a lot of people that don't know Hollywood don't know what's so special about that time, what he's trying to tell, what he's trying to do for that movie. It does not hit you that way, and you do not think of that movie in that sense. And so a lot of people that watched it, kids, say, 18, 19-year-olds that love Tarantino movies, all they can remember is the ending. All they can remember is that Cliff Booth bashing a girl's face in and the flamethrower at the end. Like, that's it. That's all they can remember. But for other people that loved it, they literally remember the tiny moments. They remember the moments that are nostalgic, that are a love letter to Hollywood and of that time, and the ending, the signal of the ending of the 60s, the Manson murders. So that I was on the the former. I couldn't tell you what the hell that movie was about the first time I saw it, because I didn't know much about Hollywood. Not that I was just getting into movies. I'd been watching movies for a long time, but I just didn't know what he was trying to do. And I think now, whenever I rewatched it and I have that knowledge in mind of what he's trying to do, you look at it in a different way, and the movie is completely different than what I saw it. I do have those like every moment, and we'll talk about my favorite scenes, my favorite lines, my favorite moments, and all that, because it does feel much different. It feels like something that you don't want to let go of, and you want more of it, and more and more and more, but it's over, it's gone. And that's kind of what that ending feels like. It's like you want to stay there, but it's gone. So I had saw it on 35 millimeter as well. I'd actually seen the last two Tarantino movies on film. Saw Hateful Eight on 70 millimeter Roadshow at Cinemark, and then saw 35 millimeter print of Angelica, and I fell asleep. Shouldn't say that, but I fell asleep in the movie. I was tired, and I just
Well,
didn't get
what?
it.
I
But
mean,
now I get it.
I mean,
sorry, Tarantino. I get it now.
I'll give you credit for it, because I mean, I think that especially with how the camera moves in the cinematography, it's many directors who are able to be fluid with their camera work, and they have that knowledge and that prowess. It can be hypnotic. So I'm not gonna bash you for falling asleep. I think that whenever you focus on just these long, quiet, just shots where we just follow these characters around, whether it be whether it be Cliff Booth driving, or we see the setup for Rick Dalton's first interaction with Timothy Olympion.
I mean,
Whenever they're
I
in the
enjoyed
saloon.
this. I enjoyed the cinematography and all that. I think what it was is I was not connected to the characters or the
Mhm.
story at all, and it got to me. But the recent time that I've watched it, I'm fully invested. And I know
Yeah.
that just sounds like, oh man, this guy knows that it's a good movie, so he wants to say it's a good. It's like I'm not trying to be that. Like I'm honest that I didn't like it, and I think that if you have a different idea of what that movie is and what it's trying to do, I think that's important for people to give
Yeah.
movies a chance. It's like figure out why people loved it, figure out what's in it, and do the research, do the background, and you might get a different opinion. I think that's
Yeah.
important.
Because I mean, whenever I first watched, this film, I was watching it with the state of mind that this is what the 60s was for Tarantino. It was how he viewed the lens, is everything that he felt important about it. And I mean, that really shows. And I think that that also goes back towards what I was saying with it being representative of his career. Because while you have Rick Dalton being that insecurity, then you look at, Brad Pitt's Cliff Booth, this, the man's man. Uh, he's clearly based off of Hal Needham. He's a stunt double for Burt Reynolds. They both served in the army before trying their luck at stunt doubling and trying to get into Hollywood. But Booth, he represents, I think, what Tarantino is. He's as unapologetic as he is, offensive. And if I were to pin this down to a certain scene, I think it'd be whenever we see him interact with Bruce Lee. It's, everybody knows Bruce Lee. He's a legend, right? He's, a titan of the industry. Yet that doesn't sway Cliff Booth, just as that would never sway Tarantino. As much as he loves Bruce Lee, you know, Tarantino's not gonna stop being himself just because somebody says that he should, no matter who it is. And I think that through this journey of the film, we follow Cliff Booth as much as we follow uh Rick Dalton for the purpose of overcoming these critiques. It's to look at himself and what made him who he is, and that starts with his roots with 1960s Hollywood. I mean, he grew up in that area. He grew up in LA during the 60s. That is his childhood. And then it goes throughout his entire career. And whenever we finally see that that kick-ass climax, whenever he's beating the shit out of the hippies, it it feels satisfying. It feels like the characters have overcome something, but we don't know what. And that's not until that you look at it through Tarantino's eyes that you see that he's speaking for himself. It is
Yeah.
as personal as it is creative, and he just hides it through the subtext because that's what he does whenever he writes and directs his films. um Something that was sort of interesting for me, because I mean, like, if I'm gonna make this analogy about, it being about his career and these critics, you look at the Manson family, and they're critics of Tarantino's career, looking at it through this lens, sort of. The Manson family, from what we see, they want to take this ethical and moral high ground, right? uh they want to say that they're better than these actors in Hollywood who taught them violence, and they're meant to sort of purify modern America, but they stoop just as low as these characters do, if not lower, because they actually take part in this violence, and they are an active contribution to it. While Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, they merely emulate it. It's artistic expression, while theirs is defamation of art. And that's what I sort of looked at whenever I first saw that. And then that made me think a little bit about Sharon Tate's character. Because I don't know if you remember this, but I remember whenever that first came out, many people were very critical of her interpretation, because they said that she didn't do anything in the movie. She didn't contribute to the plot's development whatsoever. And people, they really looked at it through the wrong lens, in my opinion. You know, they see her just going to parties and enjoying life and just being this free spirit, And I think that it's because, Tarantino, he doesn't want to do anything with her. He doesn't know how to, and it feels exploitative. But I think that Sharon Tate, she's representative of, passion and innocence, especially within young moviegoers. Her character's purpose was to emulate that golden era of Hollywood, that innocent love and joy that was sort of tainted by the Manson murders, and it changed Hollywood forever. I mean, we get this sort of reflective and nihilistic new Hollywood through Brian De Palma, Frank Coppola, and Martin Scorsese, and a lot of that, it came from how America viewed itself after the Manson murders, and to create this fairy tale from her character where the opposite happens and we get this ending that we wish could have happened. It keeps this innocence that we all look for and we hope to, obtain and keep pure throughout our lives.
Mhm. Yeah, I think um that, with Sharon Tate, I think first off, Margot Robbie personally puts on a great performance. I remember those critiques, and
Absolutely.
I personally think that that's just a product again of the people that critiqued this film in that way are the people that were like me and did not understand what this movie was at the time. And I think, I was listening to Tarantino on a podcast, Pure Cinema podcast, and he was talking about like how he reads some of the critics. He's been reading critic reviews for all of his movies. He says critics nowadays like don't get it. They just don't get it. He's like, you don't understand my movie. And the people he was talking with, there's a lot of people that hop on that podcast that he'll talk with, and they listening to them talk about the movie kind of gave me a new perspective. And then I did some research and read up that her sister Deborah Tate, who's still alive, I think she's like 66 years old, she was a part of the process. Tarantino had her a part of the process. So it's like, if you feel like the people that critique that are just trying to be social justice warriors, which I get that. It's like you want to see women do more in roles, which is perfect. But also, what Tarantino was trying to do with this character was give her a new story, give her a new life that was taken from her. She was this energetic, fun spirit, beautiful, loving person that was taken from us. And he gives her power. He gives her life at the end of this film by letting her live on, letting her spirit live on in this film. I think that's extremely important and extremely like emotional, especially for people for that time. Like you watch that movie and you think Sharon Tate still lives, and it's like, I don't want to see or know the truth behind this. I'm happy with this ending. And I think that's very important. Her character not speaking much, her character having a day in the life, and we see her watch her own movie and enjoy her life and the pregnancy and Jay Sebring and Roman Polanski and all that, giving her the life and power instead of sometimes saying less is
Yeah.
more. Seeing
Because
her act that character out it was just amazing seeing her do it without the words.
yeah,
you know that's what it
because
was about.
I
it
mean,
wasn't it wasn't about her doing anything or having a story arc. It was about giving her a life, giving her passion. Sorry, go ahead.
so I mean, like, especially before Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out, whenever you heard the name Sharon Tate, there's only one other thing that followed in your mind, and that was the Manson murders. It
Yeah,
tainted her legacy and it tainted her memory
exactly.
because of how violent and evil it was with what happened to her. And I think that that's what people ignored with what Tarantino was trying to do, was emancipate her legacy from what tarnished it. And
Yeah.
that was, these evil people who did these despicable acts, and she was freed from that. Just a little bit with this movie. I was able to see her for who she was and not what destroyed her.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think that
extremely important. And Margot Robbie put on a beautiful performance.
mhm,
And I can say like point blank, I mean, Martin Scorsese gave Margot Robbie her career in Wolf of Wall Street, and she's phenomenal in that film. And ever since, she's been on fire. She's been amazing, and she's been a great actress for so long. But I personally think that's one of her top three performances
mhm.
in the last 10 years. It's so beautiful and so effective in what she's doing. I just I can't see any critiques towards that role
Yeah.
besides she doesn't do much. Just like people gave Anna Paquin and Martin Scorsese crap for Anna Paquin not saying a word in The Irishman. It's like, you don't have to say a word or to have lines to have meaning and effect. That's not
Especially whenever that silence speaks so much more than words.
exactly. I'm like, those looks that, and I know this is a sidetrack, but those looks that Anna Paquin gives in The Irishman,
It says so much.
they haunt me to this day because it says so much. I'm like, I don't ever want my kid. I don't have
To
any
look
kids
at
right
you
now.
like that.
Yeah, I don't have any kids right now, but I don't want anyone that I love to look at me like that, to know without saying anything. That's so important. And Margot Robbie has a very, very similar performance, but it's less despicable. It's more loving. It's her passion of who she is and what she is. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, because I mean, like, if I were to say, like, if I were to, sort of talk about each of these characters, whether it be Cliff Booth, Margot Robbie, Sharon Tate, or Rick Dalton, like, to give them a central meaning, I think that, Rick Dalton, he was the funny. I think that he's sort of like that inspiration that we could all relate to, while Cliff Booth, he was that cool, that macho man that, we all want to be. And then Sharon Tate, she was the heart. I mean, she was what brought the film down to just this human level that you could just love and enjoy. And I think that there was so much passion and love within her character that Tarantino created. It's so hard to critique it. It's impossible for me. It's impossible for me to, with full dignity, to say that they could have done better with Sharon Tate, because they couldn't have. It was amazing.
yeah,
It was thought provoking, and it was elegant. It was a fairy tale, the fairy tale of what we wish all could have happened in reality.
yeah. Yeah, I can't. I will defend that to this day. If someone tries to critique Margot Robbie's role of that, I thought something. This is a quick little side note. I thought something that was cool about all the hippies in the film was that a lot of them were the offspring of already famous people.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really cool thing that he was doing. It speaks on what he's trying to say. It's this passing of the torch. It's this love letter saying goodbye to the old days. You had Harley Quinn Smith, you had Maya Hawker in this film. Like, there's a lot of the hippies were offspring of not former, currently famous, but
Yeah.
older people from that day. And it's that, again, that kind of like speaks to what he's doing with this film. And he
Yeah.
chose them as the role simply because it is this kind of like new
They're
wave.
legacy characters. Yeah.
Yeah, they're legacy characters, and it's like this passing of the torch to this new wave of people. Even though the hippies are like, God damn fucking hippies, but it's still like all the characters have heart and meaning, and
it feels self-referential in a way.
yeah.
I mean, even to just add another layer of nuance, you look at characters like Bruce Dern and Al Pacino.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
they
Bruce
took a
Dern.
they took a step back with the roles. I mean, they played powerful people who had clear influence on Hollywood, just as these actors did in real
Yeah.
life. But even then, it's we see that they're more figures of the past as we move towards something new, and as we're saying goodbye to Bruce Dern and Al Pacino, as these new titans of industry come in. It's the exact same thing with what was happening in the 60s, especially during this era, because you're transitioning from the golden age of Hollywood into new Hollywood.
Yeah. I think Bruce Dern has one of my favorite line, probably my favorite line, and it's just two things. It's so simple and so quick, but I laugh at it every time I hear it, because it's whenever Cliff Booth is waking him up, and he's just like, hey, what's his Spawn, what's it, Joe Spawn, George Spawn. He's like,
George
George.
Spawn, yeah.
He's like, George, it's Booth. Huh? It's Booth, Cliff Booth, John Wilkes.
Booth.
It gets me every time, because I'm like, well, everyone's like, are we allowed to make Lincoln jokes? It's like, yeah, it's past.
It's been long enough.
It's like, it's not too soon anymore. It's like, it's still sad, but damn,
it's It's so stupid too.
Yeah, it's so stupid, but it was just like the way Bruce Dern said it in a way it was like
John
everything.
Wilkes Booth.
John Wilkes. I just love it. That whole scene is funny because
I mean, yeah, I
he's
love
just
Bruce.
like, I'm blind.
Yeah, dude, I love Bruce Dern's entire attitude. Every time he's just like, just Cliff Booth keeps fucking forgetting that he's blind, and he's so quick to run. Don't you remember? I just told you I'm fucking blind.
Oh man, it's he kills the role in the book because I've been reading the book, and you get a little bit more information on George Spahn and Squeaky's relationship. He actually does watch the TV shows with her. They actually like do the things that they say, and they have a beautiful relationship. Him and Squeaky, George Spahn, they like. She like Squeaky like kind of doesn't want to be there. She doesn't want to be a hippie anymore because she technically like she has to like jack him off. Like Charles Manson like asked her to take one for the team in the book, and she's like, should I be here? But like what keeps her there is George Spahn. They have a loving relationship, and I know you don't get to see that in the film, but kind of reading about it is kind of like really cool. That I was like, wow, I kind of like, because like that whole scene, you know, and I know we're like jumping around from scene to scene. We're not going to go in order or anything, but like that whole scene where he's at the ranch, I remember the first time I saw it. Again, I didn't like the movie the first time, but I do remember a feeling I had the first time. I was like, damn, something bad might happen.
It's gonna happen. I was waiting for Cliff Booth to bite it, man.
Yeah, I'm like, something's gonna happen. Like, these are killers. We're like, that's the thing. Like thinking about that movie, it's like you see the hippies, you see the Manson family. They kill people, like they're killers. If you don't know much about the story, they're killers. So like you're sitting there and you're like, these are some crazy ass kids. They're about to fuck him up. Obviously, Cliff Booth handles it like a pro, and he's never afraid. He's never afraid of anything, dude. Sidebar on that, Cliff Booth in the book, you must read it. Like, I'm not gonna spoil too much, but I will say some shit, bro. He is a maniac. Quentin, like he is. I don't know what picture you have of Cliff Booth from the movie, but my God, he is a maniac. He is the most interesting character in this goddamn book. And he's a maniac. Like, there's so much from his past that's just like, what the fuck, man? So it's like, if you knew that going into this scene, oh, you would have known Cliff Booth has got this. He ain't scared of shit.
I whenever Once Upon a Time in Hollywood first released, I had this this sort of just theory that it was like it was my own personal headcanon. So I mean, we all know that in Inglorious Bastards, the first movie that Tarantino worked with Brad Pitt on was Lieutenant Aldo Rain, and one of my theories was just I wonder if I always wondered, like, what if this was the like illegitimate son of Lieutenant Aldo Rain, who served in the Korean War, and you just see that emulation of this fucking badass. I'm like, dude, that's my headcanon. Nobody can change that for me.
That'd be dope, because I see the similarities. I see it. Brad Pitt, he won for that role, obviously, for supporting actor, but he kills it. You know, I mean, he has a famous line, and he's like, "You're Rick fucking Dalton, don't you forget it." He apparently, that was ad-lib, like that was
improv.
Yeah, so good on him. But yeah, he's a maniac in the book, and that scene, it is kind of terrifying. But
did they explore his wife a little bit more?
Oh, dude, yeah. Do you want to know?
I do. I want to know. He did it.
Yeah, he did it, bro. He's killed lots of people in his life, like actually like murdered. Like it's told non-linearly, so you find out he kills his wife like early on, but then you don't know how, and then he gets 2-3 chapters later, then you find out how, and then 3 chapters later, I just finished a chapter where he like the first 2 men that he killed is because he was taking some girl on a date. I think she's a escort or something, but he's trying to take her on a date, but these 2 guys are like watching them, and so he tells her to go to the bathroom, and the 2 guys come and talk to him and says, "Hey, you're gonna walk away right now and never think about this. If we see you again, you'll be in the hospital or some shit." And Cliff Booth just like puts a fucking gun on the table, and he's like, "I'm sorry, what?" And he's like, "How about you guys shut the fuck up, and if you say one more word, I'm gonna put a bullet through you guys' head." And then the 2 guys are like, "Who the fuck are you?" So he picks up the fucking gun and kills them both, like straight up. And because he's a World War II vet, and then those two are criminals. He literally told me, he's like, I can kill you right now and I'm gonna get away with it. So he kills them
Yeah,
and
'cause
gets
he's a
away
war
with it.
hero.
He gets away with it, and the end of the chapter is like, he's like, yeah, Cliff Booth gets away with it. It's like the end of the chapter, last final words are, and that's how he got away with the first murder. And he gets away with his wife murder. He gets away with, like, dude, he is a murderer. Like, he's a bad dude, bad guy. I'm not
See,
even gonna lie. Like, he does dog fighting. Like, his dog in the movie
oh yeah, it was
is
very
a
clear
dog.
that it's a
Yeah,
dog fighter.
dog
Uh,
fighter. Like, that dog was chewed up and beat to shit, and he felt sorry for the dog, so he kept the dog. But after a
yeah.
while, but he was making cash. It's crazy. He's a bad guy,
Um,
but
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that it goes to show how well Tarantino does subtext, because whenever I was first watching that, I had no idea that tidbit about his character, but there's this level of danger and sort of like this tension with Cliff Booth. It's like, this is a dude who has seen some shit and he's done some shit. And I was kind of wondering, like, if whenever I was first watching this movie, if we are going to see a fallout between Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth. And I was like, if that ever would happen, it'd be fucking violent, because Rick Dalton, he's got a mouth, but fucking
yeah,
Cliff Booth, he can talk the talk. He can
yeah,
kick your ass real quick, man. But
yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, like, that's so cool, especially with what
Dude,
Tarantino did with this film, because like, down to George Spahn and Squeaky, he created just an entire biography for each character. Everybody has a story to tell, and it's so deep. Along with, it feels like he created 1960s Hollywood as a living, breathing entity.
yeah,
Everything down to a T was beautiful. It was amazing. It was perfect, man. Nobody can say otherwise. This movie is so perfect with what he was trying to accomplish.
yeah. He really killed it. I think I think every scene, the thing that, like, you people may not realize at first is, like, it really is just a day in the life with these characters. Like, I think, the first hour and a half, 2 hours of the film are literally a span of 2 days. Like,
Yeah.
it's
And then
all
you
these
cut a
different
year
characters.
later.
Yeah, and then you cut. No, I think it's 6 months later.
Oh yeah, because it happened in the winter and then the murders
Yeah,
happened in the summer. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a beautiful thing, and I was telling, whenever I rewatched it, it's like having that nostalgic feeling, having that mindset of what this film is. I think for me, like, I found a new favorite scene, because, like, in the past, again, like, the scene that sticks out is the ending, but that's no longer my favorite scene. It doesn't stick out to me. The scene that sticks out to me is the one that, like, rang true the most for me. And then the moments that are really good beforehand, but the scene that sticks out the most to me is the FBI, whenever they're sitting down and the entire town is watching FBI.
Oh yeah.
And the reason I love that so much is because he was able to capture what it was like back in the day. And this only ended probably about 10 years ago when streaming started happening.
Yeah, because TV was huge back
TV was
then.
huge. People sat down and they watched a goddamn show. Like, I remember growing up as a kid, like, it's not the same as FBI, but you sat down and you watched Lost. You sat down with your family and you watched American Idol.
Lost. I mean, for me,
It was a week. Yeah.
I used to live in around Atlanta at the time. I mean, Walking Dead was huge for everybody,
Walking Dead.
but for Atlanta, because they were filming it in there, and like you could drive by and you could see them shooting on set. I saw them shoot on set like 2 or 3 times in my life.
Yeah.
It was so cool, man. Like, everybody watched Walk Dead, and that's what it was like so much with you know to watch FBI back in the
Yeah.
day. And then you have Miami Vice in the 80s. That's
Yeah.
another massive show that everybody was watching.
CSI. Quentin Tarantino directed an episode or two of CSI. Um, Things like that. Like, you sat down with your family and you watched a show. And one of my good friends, he'll be on the show, Hayden. At some point, he'll be on the show as a guest star. Me and him, the reason we became friends is because of a show. Like, we watched Arrow every Wednesday at 7
Arrow
p.m.
and the Flash for y'all. Yeah.
Growing up in middle school and high school, every Wednesdays at 7 p.m. we were sitting on our ass watching Arrow. Like, it was amazing. It was like a feeling you couldn't miss it. You couldn't wait till next week. You couldn't binge because you'd be so far behind. And the only thing you could do is record it. and then you could binge it, but your DVR only has so much space. So
Yeah.
you had to sit down, like sitcoms, The Big Bang Theory, How I Met Your Mother, Friends, all those. Like that's a feeling that we will never get again. Because I know people are like excited about Euphoria nowadays, but
Yes, like right now, right
Euphoria is
now,
still watched, episode to episode within that week because it is just on HBO Max. It's not bam. You have 7 o'clock to watch it right now. And if you want to watch it later, you've got to record it. Other than that,
you're screwed.
you're screwed. You
Yeah,
can't watch it with everyone else. You're watching it at any time because it just sucks. It just
and
sucks.
another show that took the world by storm, was Stranger Things, and you don't get that same feeling because Netflix releases an entire season at once, and so you can binge it all in one night. People talk about it for the next week or so, and then
Yeah, but you always, episode to episode. It was because I remember Stranger Things season 2 came out. And me and Hayden had watched it all in one night, but no one else had seen it. And it was like people would wait till the end of the weekend to start it. They had so long to watch it. It was on.
Well, yeah, that's
It
what
was
I'm saying. It's like
you
the
don't.
hype just wasn't there. Even then, because
Yeah,
it released all at once, the hype was gone
yeah,
within a month at most.
yeah. And
Um,
it's like that episode to episode week. So that's why that scene, like, you just sit down with your buddy, you grab a drink, whiskey sour, and you're watching the show. And I mean, it would make it even better if you knew who the person was, like Rick and Cliff. It was like, hey, you got the famous scene.
yeah,
It's amazing. And then he was cutting between Al Pacino watching it. And I think you see Sharon Tate and her people watching it. I could be no, I think they're at the party. The
yeah, they're at the
Playboy
party.
Mansion.
There's somebody else who was watching it, though. I can't remember.
But yeah, that scene just rang true for me. I never watched episode FBI, but that just rang true, and I fell in love with that scene. Like, and I didn't want to. I was like, I really just want to sit down and watch the show with them because
Yeah.
it felt alive, and that's
Especially
what I'm saying. Like,
especially whenever you're watching it, you had that voiceover of them talking with each other, and sort of
yeah,
talking about everything that's going on behind the movie.
it's so beautiful.
It is, man.
What was your favorite scene?
Oh man. Favorite scenes. I think that mine, it was whenever they're shooting the first scene of the show that Rick Dalton was doing in the
Lancer?
saloon. Lancer, yeah. They're shooting, it was the one whenever he first meets what's his name? Timothy Olyphant. Is that how you say his last name? Oliphant.
There's no.
Hey. Yeah, I got to give out a little disclaimer to the audiences. Whenever it comes to names, I'm not your guy. I suck at pronouncing them. But yeah, Timothy Oliphant. Whenever they're just talking, setting the stage for everything that's happening in the show, and it's just this entire one take where you're following these two characters in their conversation, how well written it is, and you're getting so into it. And then Rick Dalton flubs his lines. And you're just, you get frustrated with the director because like you're so into it because they're performing it so well.
Yeah.
And then you just see Rick Dalton getting in his own head, and he's seeing that he's destroyed the entire performance whenever he doesn't even know he's giving one of the greatest performances of his life. And that's before he even does the the scene that they finish in one take.
Yeah.
It's just like he is killing it, and his own insecurity is just getting in his way. He's in his own head. And you're just like, dude, just shut the fuck up and act. Like whenever I watched it, like I realized how Tarantino set the scene with the the director being in the voiceover. Like there's a reason why we never cut. I think that most amateur directors, they would have cut to the director's reaction to see what was to see his frustration. But I think the reason why he didn't was because he wanted the audience to be just as into the scene as this director was. And we see that he's frustrated not because he flubbed his line, but because Rick Dalton won't just shut the fuck up and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And then you cut away to him just fucking throwing a fit. Promising that he's gonna be a sober man, and he starts drinking immediately after.
That part is so funny, but it's so, like the more you watch it, the less funny it becomes, the more like sad it becomes. It's like, damn, this guy is really going through, like, he's really going through it, and it sucks, to see him like he's on his like mindset of like, I'm a has-been, and he doesn't want to fuck up, and then he fucks up, and it's so sad, but I can't help but think it's funny every time he like takes that
Yeah.
drink and then spits it out. He's like,
Just-
"What are you doing? What are you doing?" Like, it's so funny, but it's also like, damn, dude, like it's so sad because Hayden's an actor as well. He's like, I feel for him. Like, I feel that. Like,
You feel that frustration.
yeah, you
You feel like
it.
you're a failure, and it's just, oh my god, I don't know, man. Because like I know that for DiCaprio, that entire scene, in his trailer, that was full improv. It was him
Yeah,
just like they left the camera rolling. That's why it was so jump cutty. It was just him doing his fucking thing. It was him just
yeah,
having fun. And I loved
yeah.
it. I love that entire portion of the film. I mean, I've heard a couple of critiques saying that there's a second act lull, but I'm like, no, man, it's a day in the life.
Yeah.
Just you're having fun. Just
You
have
should
fun.
be you should be invested in these characters' lives at that point. Like, you shouldn't
Yeah,
want it to end. And if you're not invested, then the movie's not for you. That's
because I
plain and
mean,
simple.
it's a 3 hour movie, but for me, the movie feels like it's an hour and a half because
Yeah,
everything really does move quick.
yeah. I think it's really cool, DiCaprio, you know, that they were able to like let him improv and do that scene however he wanted, because he was super invested into this character. Like, he loved it so much. I had read that he took a 25% pay cut off of his usual $20 million that he makes on a movie just to be able to get this made. And it's amazing. Like, that's kind of like the drive that Tarantino is able to put in these characters. Like, Brad Pitt and DiCaprio were sold on these characters. Like, those are two of the best actors alive. And Tarantino's able, I mean, DiCaprio's able to take
Movies and I mean, like you look at Don't.
25% cut.
I mean, you look at Don't Look Up, where he wouldn't even accept the script until
Some changes
you
were
know
made.
Adam K went through the changes that he wanted, not a producer, not anybody else, that Leonardo himself wanted.
Yeah.
Then you look at Inception with Chris Nolan, one of the most prolific directors of the modern era, and he said, "Hey, you need to make these changes. I need you to focus on his relationship with Maul if I'm going to do this." And I think that's amazing, and it shows Tarantino's prowess, not because he's a say-so director, but he's able to put so much passion and love and care into every aspect of his stories that anyone is sold immediately whenever you hear it. It's because he knows what people love because he loves it too.
Yeah.
And that's so hard for a director just to fully master. I don't think we've ever seen it with
Yeah.
anybody other than Tarantino himself.
Yeah. And I think that, with this film, I think that this is one of the first films that he had where I like sat back and was able to, like, if not the first film, that I was able to just sit back and just enjoy the little moments, the moments of them driving through the city at
Yeah.
night, at night, especially with all the neon signs, the signs lighting up. That scene was absolutely beautiful. It just takes just sit back and enjoy the ride. That's what it was. Like, Cliff Booth is driving around the city most of the movie. And you just want to sit back
And
and
you love
enjoy
it.
this ride.
It's so
Yeah.
hypnotic.
Yeah.
Um
It's
yeah,
beautiful.
I mean the driving in these little moments, it plays especially into his use of music. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Tarantino, he is the best at the pin drop. I mean, he so carefully selects out, the music that he wants for each scene. It all is so personal to him, but it's also so fitting, whether it be with an ironic juxtaposition or just fitting
Yeah.
the exact mood and tone that he needs. And whenever you just see him drive, it's music that you want to drive to. I mean, I remember whenever the album dropped or for the soundtrack, whenever I was driving around, I was listening to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Yeah.
man. I was listening to
Yeah.
Paul Revere and the Heartbreakers, the Rolling Stones, Bring Me
Yeah.
Little Lovin'.
Yeah. I had read that he was so like into the music selections where it's like he knew what was going to be on the radio at that time of day, at that time, like, and he put it all in. It's like
Yeah.
when he's
Have
driving
you
around, those are the type of music you would have heard in
have
Hollywood.
you listened to the soundtrack?
Yeah, I've listened to it quite a bit.
Yeah,
It's
because
got
like
the radio in it. It's
he
got
has a
all the
setup like
songs.
it's a full
Yeah.
radio throughout the day.
Yeah, there's a full on like song where it's just radio talk. It's not even song, it's just radio talk.
And that's another cool section of just Tarantino, because before he was set on becoming a film director, radio assisting. He got so into radio because he likes being able to set up, you know, just hearing what he want, having the audience hear what he wants them to hear. I mean, you go back to whenever he worked at you know, a video shop, he would create his own little film festival selections, and so for radio, that was, you know, that's where he was able to control that niche that he had and create just entire vibes, playlists, whatever you want to call it. And in his very first feature film before Reservoir Dogs, it was an unfinished, lost, forgotten feature film called My Best Friend's Birthday. It's on YouTube. It's only like 30 minutes. So I think, you know, anybody who wants to discover more Tarantino, they got to check it out, man. But it's centered around people who work at a radio station, and sort of their relationships, and you get to see that passion that he has for radio, and that just goes into what makes this film so great. Is he put literally everything that he loves, whether it be film, TV, or radio, and it all just intermingles, and it's so cohesive, and that's why it feels so solid, because it is him.
Yeah,
It is nobody else but him.
this is his absolute most personal film he's ever made. Like,
Mhm.
you feel him in this film more than I feel him in any other movie. And I had actually recently just done a Quentin Tarantino binge before I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in preparation for this podcast. And I think some people may even say that this is his best movie. His ninth movie is his best movie. And some people are like, if he's really going to stop at 10, gosh, this really does feel like the final movie. And it's like, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do as your 10th movie? There were like rumors. It's like, is he going to do Star Trek for his 10th movie? I think that's dead.
Oh, I remember that, dude. I'm so
Yeah.
glad he's not. I'm like, he needs to do an original story for his last movie.
Some people say it might be Kill Bill 3. I'm like,
I've heard Kill Bill 3. I've also heard that they're going to bring back Jules Winfield from Pulp Fiction, just follow what he's been doing after the events of Pulp Fiction. And I'm like, honestly, I know that people, I mean, he says that the next film, whatever he does do, is going to be epilogue-y. So I can see him returning to these stories, but also, I don't know, man. Tarantino, he's a guy, he just likes to do the same thing twice.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to argue Kill Bill 1 and 2, that's one movie, motherfucker. Ask Tarantino. Ask Tarantino.
There's a cut that got released in like 2011 where they're just both back to back. It is just one movie because that's how it was originally written.
It was just so long.
They just said fuck it and split it into two, and it works. I think for me personally, it's like I'm slowly starting, after doing the binge, starting to come around and say that Jackie Brown is now my favorite Tarantino movie.
Jackie Brown is so underrated, man.
It is, and I think people that, again, you don't get Tarantino, you just don't. I think it's just phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. But I do think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has a case to be his best movie because it is his most personal. It's his most emotional, but I might have to roll with Jackie Brown at this point. It used to be my favorite was Django Unchained. But that's another like quick, topic of like, there is a distinct difference between what is his best
and his favorite.
And what is your favorite? Yeah. And I think that my favorite might be Jackie Brown, but I think his best is probably Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. If I'm being completely honest, I think I'm rolling with that, but we'll just have to see.
You see,
time will tell.
This might be a little bit of a hot take. First off, it's so hard to determine what his best film is because they're all damn near flawless. But one that stuck with me that I think that might be his best, and this is a hot take, is Hateful Eight.
Oh man.
I think Hateful Eight is his best, man. It's, how hard it is to do it's a whodunit. It's a whodunit. But to trap people into one setting, like it's a bottle episode, and just build character purely by dialogue, especially, me, what I do is I write, and I find how hard it is to create compelling dialogue and to set up a scene to where it's just people talking about nothing, to where you so distinctly hide the ulterior motives that you don't know what's going on, until it's already happened. I mean, everything has to be so carefully done. Each camera movement, each cut, each edit that you make, the way that the actors say their lines, it all has to be purposeful. And again, it goes back to what Tarantino loved. I was listening to I think he was talking with Chris Nolan after the premiere of Hateful Eight, and he was talking about how he loved the heavies and his favorite TV series, and how they're all just despicable people, and how cool it would be to where you just bring them all together, all these people who are villains, and they're all conniving and they're all scheming, and you have just this palpable tension throughout because you never know what's going to happen next, and you're just guessing until it does happen. And I think that it's open, it's open ending with how whenever Samuel L. Jackson he goes ahead and him and Walter Goggins, they killed Daisy Domergue, the blow her fucking head off. One thing that I think everybody's wondered was, I wonder if that gang of 20 really did exist and if they were coming. I mean, I don't know, man. For me, it's such a fun movie. But if I were to go to my favorite, man, I'd say maybe Glorious Bastards or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I dig that. I think those two are very similar. You could consider that to be like, I don't know, you could consider that to be like the sister film, to be honest. But I don't know. I think I'd have to disagree on the Hateful Eight. I think for me personally,
I know for you, yeah.
I personally don't even really like that movie that much. Which was crazy because before I liked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, my mindset was like, damn, I really haven't liked Tarantino's last two movies, which sucks. But I think it's good. I think it's his worst movie in my opinion. For me.
Have you seen Death Proof?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, that's his worst. You don't need to see it.
Yeah,
I mean, he disowns that movie. He makes?
Does he? I heard that he said it's still personal for him. I didn't know that he disowned it.
I mean, it's personal because he loves exploitative horror, but
yeah. I thought that was like more of a fun film for him and Robert Rodriguez to kind of attack the grindhouse shit.
I definitely agree, and I think it was just like he said. I mean, from just what I could garner from interviews, I mean, he said by quote that he disowns that movie, but he severely underestimated people's knowledge and love for exploitative filmmaking. And so whenever he was making it, he wanted it to sort of be like what Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was for 60s films, but with exploitative horror, and it didn't get any groundwork, and he, by admission, he didn't do it the best that he possibly could. It was sort of felt repetitive, and that's not to say it's a bad movie. Still, it's very enjoyable to watch, but I get it.
Yeah, I definitely need to check it out. I know it's a TV movie, so I know there's a Blu-ray out, but I don't know. I just haven't. For some reason, I just haven't checked that one out. It's kind of like with PTA, who we'll talk about here real soon.
With Hard Eight.
With Hard Eight, I just never checked it out until recently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think closing thoughts for me on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think it's phenomenal, and I think that people should really, if you don't like it, give it a chance. With a different attitude and different mindset going into it. If all you're looking for is this plot and this build up to this climactic ending, that's not what you're getting, and that's not what this movie is. And if that's all you think it is, you might be really, really bored. I can attest to that as experience. But if you have a different idea on what this is and what it's trying to do, and if you allow the characters to take over for you and lead you through this journey on this day in the life, it's so much more and so rich in detail and so rich in power and emotion that it's a fully different experience each time you watch it. You can watch it back to back to back to back to back over and over and over, and you'll find something new about it and find something more exciting about it that you didn't catch the first time. And just remember, it's literally just about this time and these characters, and you're supposed to live with them. So yeah, I absolutely love the film now. I'm gonna probably be watching it 2 or 3 times a year now. just to learn.
I mean, yeah, my closing thoughts is for me, this film, it's the definitive summer blockbuster movie for me. I think that it's what's fun about watching movies and being able to watch it, either casually or through a critical lens. It's fun. Tarantino, he hasn't made movies to create, these great philosophical questions and ideas, or to dive into auteur or independent filmmaking. That's just not, it's not who he is, and he doesn't pretend to be. And a lot of people, I think they get confused that good cinema has to be independent cinema, and that's not the case. And Tarantino, he's living proof of that. His films have substance, but in a different way than one would expect. And with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there's so much introspection and there's so much deep thought, but it presents itself in a different way that it's fresh and satisfying for the viewer. I can't tell you how many times I've seen films with washed up actors, and that's the plot of the story, but he did something that it feels unique, and that's what he does. Everything that he does is unique to him. And that's whenever you hear that Martin Scorsese quote, the most creative is the most personal. It's that. It's doing what you love, not because you want other people to love it, but because you love it yourself.
Swap it. The most personal is most creative.
Most personal is most creative.
Yeah.
My bad.
I didn't know that because I just rewatched the Bong Joon-ho whenever he won the Oscar and he said that quote.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like fresh in my brain. But yeah, no, I got what you're saying.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's from one film that is nostalgic and a loving of a time to another, which is why we pair it together in this double feature, to Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza. This film recently came out here in 2021. He's got the shirt on.
Gotta represent.
With Miss Alana Haim on the front of that shirt. PTA is probably my favorite living director right now. I think his films, for me, have the most rewatchability. And when this film came out, it absolutely blew me the fuck away. I was in awe from every moment. I saw it back in early December on 70 millimeter print, and it was a sold out audience. And I could feel something in that auditorium that I'd never felt before. And it wasn't an action movie. It wasn't a Marvel movie. It wasn't like, this fucking experience was better than Spider-Man for me. Like, that audience was so into this film because of the way I do not think that anyone does characters better than PTA. There's not one director living today that does characters better than PTA. If you can find me one, I'll gladly try to listen, but I can easily debate and this is his all time for me. I'm about to just gush about this movie. It is my favorite movie from last year and probably my favorite movie of this decade. I think for me, this has the most rewatchability factor. I think for me, we talk about day in the life. And even though this one's kind of like summer in the life or a year in the life with these characters rather than day in the life, this one is probably more rich in characters than Once Upon a Time for me. Because again, I come back to that. I want to live with these characters. I want to live on and see them go. And I don't want to leave this theater ever. Gary and Alana are now two of my favorite pairs on screen I've ever seen. And just rewatched it last night. And it is just, even by myself, I'm sitting there laughing and going through it. So we got so much to talk about this, but what's your opening thoughts on Licorice Pizza?
So for Licorice Pizza, I've seen it 3 times, 2 times in 1 week. Every single time it was on 70 millimeter at AMC North Park. And man, it is so hard to find a movie that is as endearing and loving as it is, supposedly controversial. Um, it's just like you said. Whenever I watch this movie, I want to be there and I want to stay there forever. I want to live in 1970s San Fernando Valley. It's just whenever a director, especially a great director, just emulates what they love and made them who they are, you become that director, even if it's just for a few hours. And that's what
Mhm.
makes it so beautiful. Tarantino did it with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I wish to God I was in 1969 LA. And then now here I am wishing I was in 1970s LA because of Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean, this movie, I think that it was almost just as self-referential as Tarantino. I love seeing all the cameos, especially with John C. Riley. just for a minute as Frankenstein, man. I heard his voice and my head snapped so
Yeah.
quick. Um,
The whole theater just like everyone knew it was him and everyone's like, is that John C. Reilly? It's like you could just hear everyone talking in the theater. It's like you never know if it's John C. Reilly until the credits come around, but it's still like you know that voice. And it's like,
mhm.
damn, Paul Thomas Anderson getting back to his roots. Hard Eight, Boogie Nights, and Magnolia back to back to back. John C. Reilly was there with him in the beginning. It was beautiful hearing his voice back.
And another actor who's been with him his nearly his entire damn career,
Yeah.
and he unfortunately passed away, was Philip Seymour Hoffman. And to see, his son emulate that legacy and have his acting debut with Paul Thomas Anderson, it was sentimental and it was sweet. With Alana Haim, her family was family friends with PTA for decades. Um, he grew like Alana grew up in front of PTA's eyes. He knows who she is
Yeah.
as a person.
Same with Cooper Hoffman.
Yeah, exactly. With Cooper Hoffman, there's so much love going on in this in this film. And I think that is because these actors, not just these characters, but these actors, their family to PTA. There's so much love, and he just wants to bring out the best in every single one of them. And excuse me, it's just beautiful. If I were to describe this movie in one word, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Stunning, beautiful, just phenomenal and mesmerizing. Like it I had never been transported to another world so much in the last 10 years. Like not even Chris Nolan movies transport me to another the world. Like even though Dunkirk brought me to World War II, I still hadn't felt that ever in a long
Mhm.
time besides Licorice Pizza. And it's so amazing. Like part of it you feel like is your life at the same time. And we weren't even born in that time. We were 20 years later. And part of it you feel like is your life, but a lot of it is Paul Thomas Anderson's life. And it's somebody
Yeah,
else's, Gary
it
Goatsman.
it
It's
felt like I knew that life whenever I
yeah.
watched it.
It just had this feeling in this way. And I think personally it does come down to the director tropes in the movie, the cinematography, the editing, and the way he and think about it was like PTA is known for his one takes and his tracking shots and everything and all that is in here. But it's fun just getting back to his roots of just let's just hold. Let's just hold right here. Whether
Yeah.
it's a close up, a medium close up, a long shot, a wide shot, a tracking shot, or whatever, he just holds and lets the characters
Yep.
and the actors run through.
I
And
noticed so much whenever I was watching this film to where he would just let the camera sit. He would never cut away. And I mean, there were scenes where nearly the entire scene, it was just one take. I know with the entire opening, it was just a tracking one shot.
yeah,
And then at the immediate scene after, we see you know, Gary and Alana on their first date. I think there's a total of two shots.
yeah,
They cut like, so the first half of the scene it was one take, and then they cut between two different camera angles back to back.
yeah,
But they played into it just to let you sit with these characters, and there has to
yeah,
be a certain discipline from a director to be comfortable with that,
yeah.
and that's who PTA is.
And I love that scene. Even watching it, for the third time yesterday. I got a little bit more emotional with that scene, and it's at the beginning of the movie. I got emotional with it because the way Alana Himes, the way that scene ends is, I'm not going to forget you. It's right before she says, like, you're probably going to be famous and big and you'll forget all about me. Right before she
Living in a
says that.
mansion by 16. Yeah.
Yeah. And right before she says that, there's like this hole on her face, and you could just see her face and her eyes just display this emotion of sadness of like, wow, I'm really this old doing nothing in my life. And here's this young kid right here who's
Built a
electric,
future. Yeah.
has a future, and I'm nothing. And you can just see that come over her face. And that, to me, that look was literally the rest of the movie. It explains why she hangs out with a 15-year-old. Now, obviously, we'll get into the controversy of that. And there's a reason why people have
Mhm.
overlooked that controversy. The other controversy people haven't overlooked, it's just kind of been like, let's talk about it. But it explains why she goes on with it. Like, here's this kid who's electric in her life. Her life is nothing going on. She works at a yearbook photo place, Tiny Toes, hates her life, hates her job. Truth be told, we don't even know if she's actually 25, because there's a
Yeah.
scene like,
They never explicitly say it.
yeah, like she changed, like, later on, in the Bradley Cooper scene, which we'll get to. She tells him she's 28, which is even worse. And then some people I've read think that she's 18, or she might just be 19, like 17, but there isn't a legal relationship going on. But I think, as Paul Thomas Anderson said in an interview, whenever someone asked him about it, is like, there's not a provocative bone in this film. And yeah, there might be a kiss scene and a showing a boob scene, and that might feel provocative. But if you feel who these characters are and what they are, which, as you should, you don't think of it that way. And if you do think of it that way, that tells you are not fully invested into this film, and it's
Mhm.
not for you. And that's how I've tried to explain it to people. It's like, that's fine, because I didn't feel that way. I never thought that they were a relationship, that they were boyfriend and girlfriend, that's what they were rooting for. I thought that Alana was trying her hardest to find life within her life and electricity. And every time she got rid of Gary and moved on to another man, what happens? Things fall apart for her. And she realizes that Gary is the one that brings this exuberance to her life, to what she is. And it's like, it shouldn't matter at the age right there for a friendship, for someone growing into who they are supposed to be.
Yeah.
I know I'm rambling, but yeah, I absolutely love that opening restaurant scene. Now, just simply because of that look she gives him right before she
Mhm.
says that, and then he's just like, "I'm not going to forget you, just like you're not going to forget me," and it's the truth. Like, from then
Yeah.
on, they'll never forget each other.
I mean, if there's one way to describe Gary and Alana throughout this film, I think it's puzzle pieces. Puzzle pieces. Simply for the fact that they are complete opposites, but in a way that's complementary. Just the way that puzzle pieces are for it to be a fit. You can't be the exact same, and you can't be slightly different. It has to be in a way that's complementary, and we see that throughout the relationships in the film. And I think that there is four distinct relationships that Alana goes through that sort of give insight into the conflict. Because whenever Paul Thomas Anderson, whenever he was describing this film, and he said the reason why he chose this age difference was because it was conflict. It helped heighten the message that he was trying to send, and that's whenever a relationship fits, you know. Um, and so the first one that really stood out to me, it was the racist the racist business owner Jerry Fake, played by John Michael Higgins. And so whenever we see this character, he has a thing for Asian culture. As we see, he has a Asian wife who only speaks Japanese, and Jerry Fick himself, he speaks absolutely zero Japanese. And it's sort of like this cartoonish comedic scene to where he's speaking in the most offensively way possible to his wife. And I think that it directly represents more so just a clear lack of communication within, their relationship, but relationships that don't work in general. This was just more of a hyperbole of that type of communication. And whenever a relationship fits, it fits, and whenever it doesn't, it doesn't. And we feel that awkward tension because we know that these are two people who should not be together. And then the next time we see him, he's with another Asian wife, who he completely disregards and disrespects. The next character that stuck out for me was Sean Penn's character.
Hey,
And
I want to touch on
oh, my
that one.
bad, my bad,
Yeah,
my bad, my bad.
yeah, I want to touch on that one. With the John Mike, I think PTA had said that again, people will ask, why is that in this movie? Why does he have to have that? Um, and I can agree at moments of like, why did he have that? And I think again with the story that he's trying to tell is of that time, that some things were not good, some things still aren't good. And he had said that he has a Japanese mother-in-law, um, that people would do that to her, that people still do it to her, that they change how they talk because of who they are. And it's like, I feel that as well as an African American. Like people will talk to me in a way that they feel like they can communicate to me rather than just talk to me. And I think that the way he did it in the movie, the first time, it's what the fuck. And I read something that somebody had said was like, the worst part about an Asian being in that theater and watching that scene and sitting around a whole bunch of white people was they couldn't tell if they were laughing at that scene because it's funny or they were laughing at how stupid and how obnoxious that character is. And it's like you can't really sit there but just wonder, and it kind of takes them out of the movie after that. And it's like I feel that, and I think the only problem is that PTA never really addresses that. He never really talks about how that's bad or anything. And in the second scene that it happens, it's kind of worse because this time when Gary introduces himself, he says hello to Kamoko, and it's like, okay, now Gary is being a stereotypical white male that's like can't differentiate between Asian women. He just thought that was the same woman, which is wrong. And it's like I I I have, like, if people are offended by that, as they should be and can be, there is nothing to defend that. There is no message in that. But I do think that people that are okay with it or have a defense towards it, which I am one of those people that can say, don't hide. Like, I think that him and Tarantino, I think Tarantino goes a little too far with the N word. Um, there's just no need for it. He puts it in his book for some reason. In all of his movies before, I think Once Upon a Time's the only one where they don't say it, but all of his movies beforehand, Tarantino has the N word in it, and it's just like, you got an issue, my dude. Like you just got an issue with it. But I think PTA, both of their defense in that is like, it's their right as a writer to tell the truth. It's not in their right to lie. And so they all, like, his defense was like, I'm not gonna lie about that time. I'm not gonna not tell the truth. That's what goes on. Um, it's this character loves Japanese culture, and he thinks that he needs to talk to his Japanese wife in a Japanese accent that doesn't have Japanese words in it. It's wrong.
Yeah,
But I
it
agree
absolutely
because
is wrong.
I agree with Paul Thomas Anderson, and I agree with people that think it's wrong. I think that there is a good balance, and I think that I don't think that a scene like that personally should deter how someone feels about that movie, but I understand how it can.
Yeah.
I understand how it can take you out of it, especially if you're in a sold out theater and people are laughing and you just don't feel that way. I
Yeah.
can understand.
I mean, I completely agree. And I like that point that you brought up. Um, is that experience of you don't know with whether or not they're laughing at the situation or, if they're laughing at the person, and it comes from, it ruins that trust that you have. Um, and I guess sort of if I were to have a defense towards, that for Paul Thomas Anderson, it's, this movie in a way, it works sort of as an odyssey. We go between different characters who have an effect on both Gary and Alana, and it's all centered around relationships, and all these people, they're not really meant to be revered or highlighted in a positive manner. It's just more so it's words of caution, I would say. It's it's the ugly sides of relationships that, people don't look at, especially coming through a masculine lens. I think that for Jerry Fick, it's uh, it's more so a sign of power and, disrespect, where he thinks that just because he appreciates Asian culture, that means that he appreciates Asian people, which is clearly not the case. And it's a very clear and distinct juxtaposition, because you would expect someone who says that they appreciate Asian culture to have that respect, but he doesn't. And you know, for me, it was okay. Yeah, this guy's a jackass, and he's meant to be seen as a jackass, along with you know not being afraid to hide the fact that America has racism in its roots, and to not sway away from that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my takeaway, and I understand why it is such a struggle,
Yeah.
and just to highlight the film, and then because it is hard.
Yeah.
You don't know people's intentions, and you don't want to have to take their word for it,
Yeah.
especially when those intentions can be bad.
I think the worst part about it is that he does it twice. It's not just once and then you move on. It he comes right back to it, and it kind of just it does hit your mind. It's like, why is this here?
Yeah.
The second time, it's like, why? I get that Gary's trying to promote his business, Soggy Bottom, in that restaurant, but why did John Michael Higgins have to talk to his wife in that accent one more time? Um,
Mhm.
it is what it is, but
And I mean, it would have been nice, to see something, to see, I guess,
some kind of
John
remorse.
Michael Higgins, yeah, to remorse, or for him to pay for his actions, where there's a
Yeah,
little bit of irony that comes, like either his business fails, or something to where it's like, okay, got to make it as clear to this audience that his behavior isn't something to be allowed. It's supposed to be ridiculed. That's
yeah,
what PTA's purpose was. And because I know PTA and I have faith in that, that's coming from my personal experience. But not a lot of people study Paul Thomas Anderson. A lot of people would just want it to go and enjoy a film, and whenever they see that, that can be very outstanding and uncomfortable for
yeah,
audiences. Absolutely.
yeah. I think another thing about PTA is like I don't think he's had one movie where it hasn't been about the characters. His characters drive the plot. His plot doesn't drive the characters, and I think that's an important thing for people to understand whenever they go watch his movies. Is that it really is a character thing. And it's like I remember watching it with one of our friends, and she wanted to see it, and she didn't understand. She kind of was just like, it was long, and I didn't know where it was going. I was like, well, that's not the point. You're not supposed to know where it's going. You're supposed to just enjoy the ride. You're just supposed
Yeah.
to be invested in these characters. And it's like if he didn't do a good enough job, it's like that's your like it's not meant to please everyone. But I think that the people that like this movie the most are the people that have studied all of his movies and have watched a lot of movies and have a different take on it. I think that's important. Is like when you go see a movie like this is arguably the greatest working director alive right now, and all of his movies have the same themes, have the same structure, have everything is the exact same. Every movie from Hard Eight on, like it hasn't changed once, and I think that's an important thing for people to
Yeah.
know whenever they go watch his movies. And this one is no exception. And I know you're going to move on to Sean Penn next. I think that's so important. Like we're about to go through all the interactions. I think like what's super important about this film is that yeah, like there's an inappropriate relationship going on between Alana and Gary. And if you are invested into these characters, you it's 100% right. Like the the age gap is there as conflict. As the audience, you are supposed to be like, this can't work. It's not supposed to work. So what you see is Alana go through these different interactions with men as her and Gary go through an argument, but each and every time, something happens to bring them back together.
Hmm.
Because it's not about those two falling in love. it's really about how they bring life into they bring
They bring the best out of each other.
they bring the best out of each other. They bring what Alana has been looking for. She like he is, and I would argue like this movie is Alana's movie. You know, I think Gary is quote unquote to me a supporting actor. This is
I
Alana's movie.
I would agree. I would agree.
But,
Um,
but yeah, let's talk about that Sean Penn interaction.
yeah, the shopping. I
Wait,
think
wait,
that the
wait, 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 wait. There's one thing before. There's one thing before. How she gets to Sean Penn.
oh yeah,
The funniest. I have this actress's name now. I'd never seen her before. Harriet Sansom Harris plays kind of like the casting agent. And right before Alana and Gary go meet this woman, Gary's like telling Alana, like, say yes to everything, say yes to anything she asks, say yes. And it's the truth. Like, you'll learn all that stuff if you get the role. Like, they have to teach you. You're the right person for the role. Acting is not knowing how to ride a horse. Acting is knowing how to be that character. So she has to go in and say yes. And what ensues for that is probably the absolute best acting in this entire goddamn film from that woman. What she does is top 5 cinema of the decade, like top 5 scene, maybe number 1 in cinema movies for the last decade. I am not fucking with you. That is just pure acting. I've never felt like I was laughing the entire time.
Yeah. So she plays a real, she plays a real talent agent, Mary Grady. That's the name of the character and also the name of the real talent agent that, her prime was in the 70s. I mean, watching that scene, especially with just you see how uncertain Alana is with the right answer. She's saying yes to everything, but she doesn't know where it's leading to. You just see it slowly get more and more ridiculous, and you're just like, shit, please.
I think the funniest one is she's like, any other sports and activities, and a lot of like Krav Maga. Then Mary is like, what the fuck is quick draw McGraw?
It's the exact same thing as like the Bruce Dern John Wilkes spoof. It's so stupid.
What the fuck is quick draw McGraw? Like Krav Maga is like,
I'm just gonna put down karate.
and then the other one was what's it called? Alana's like, I know Portuguese too. And then Mary just looks at her like this. She's like, well, bueno.
See, I mean, that's honestly like that's how I would have liked to see Jerry Fick's character be portrayed. It's just like it's fucking stupid, and it's more lighthearted than it is offensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that she did such a good job as Mary Grady. That was it was such an endearing and funny scene, especially because you see Gary just hyping up Alana on the drive there. She's like, just say yes to everything, don't say no. And then she goes, will you do topless? Yes. And Gary's like, no, no, don't.
You will lose out on work if you don't go topless. That is hands down like. I go back and forth, like either that scene or the Bradley Cooper scene is the funniest, but I think I'll stick with the Bradley Cooper. But that scene is the best acting in the movie, hands down, and probably one of the best performances I've seen personally in the last like 10, 15 years. Like, because she just absolutely kills it, steals the entire show for 5 minutes, and then you never see her again. It's so amazing.
Hilarious. It's hilarious. Every character in this film, I would say, other than Benny Safdie's character, is just hilarious. It's funny.
Oh man, can't wait to get to Benny Safdie.
Me too, man. I think that's one of my favorite segments of the film. But Sean Penn.
Yeah, that one leads into Sean Penn after Gary gets to see her tits finally.
Yeah,
they get into an argument about that because she'll do nudity, and he was like, "You won't show me nudity. You'll do nudity for a whole bunch of people, but you won't show me your tits." So then she like gets mad. She's like, "You want to see my tits?" So she shows him his tits, and a lot of people be like, "That's inappropriate." It's like,
it's not meant to be sexual. It's meant to be. It's just it's funny and it's endearing. It's like, you know what? Like, I've known this kid for however many months now, and why not? You know?
Yeah. And the slap that she gives him, I heard in the interview, PTA was like, "Yeah, Cooper had no idea that slap was going to happen. He's like, I told him to lean in for a kiss and ask her if he could touch her boobs, but I didn't tell him that Alana was going to slap him." So that like interaction is completely real.
It's
Like
genuine,
whatever,
yeah.
it's genuine. It's like, damn. And PTA is like, I would never do that to an actor, but I've known this kid forever, so it is what it
And
is.
that's what I mean. Like that's what I love so much
Yeah,
about this film, man. It's like usually whenever you say that there's good chemistry, you're looking between good chemistry between the actors, and that's absolutely true for this film.
yeah,
But also there's chemistry between the actors and the director, and it shows because they put themselves in such ridiculous situations, and you can tell that everybody's having a blast making
yeah,
this film. It is fun all around.
yeah.
But anyway, so excuse me. So for Sean Penn's character, I would say that I wouldn't say that his segment is particularly my favorite, but I think it's the most important because, like you said, Alana Haim, her character is, you know, she is the main character. It is centralized around her aspirations, and how she's sort of lost in life and she finds purpose through Gary. But through that, it takes a look at the male gaze of these characters, and how you have to look at it through a female looking at a world that knows is dominated by men, especially within that time. And so whenever they're sitting at that diner, and Sean Penn, he's sitting there and he's talking about just his entire past and his glory days, and he's living in a time that once was, and he wants to be able to relive that. um I think that it plays into that masculinity so well, because he doesn't view Alana as a person, but more so property. Honestly, it's are you gonna do this for me? You're gonna ride this motorcycle with me. We're gonna go into the war zone together. And it's just it was never about Alana. It was only about himself. And
Mhm.
then we cut to Sean Penn. He's got Alana on the bicycle, and he's getting ready to take off. And the second he starts going, she flies off and hits her head, breaks the guitar. And then what do we see immediately after? We see Gary running towards Alana.
Yeah, and the
Sean
running.
Penn Sean Penn doesn't even notice she's gone. He doesn't care.
Yeah,
He got a round of applause, and that's all he wanted. He wanted that glory.
yeah,
But Gary doesn't care about anything other than Alana's safety, and that shows that they are meant for each other. It goes into why they fit.
yeah,
We That's the whole point of all these characters. They're meant to be despicable within the subtext of it. And I think that PTA, he has his prowess and this restraint where he's not going to outwardly say to his audience that these are despicable characters, but it's up to viewer interpretation and understanding to put two and two together that, yeah, they aren't good fits. And it's all about relationships. Sean Penn's character, it leads them to come back together, Gary and Alana. And one of my favorite songs of no, it is my favorite song of the entire film plays "Let Me Roll It" by Wings, and you see him take him back to the Soggy Bottom shop. She's passed out, and Gary's looking up and down her body, and he wants to do what all horny teenage boys want to do, but he restrains himself, and it's just a further hammering that point that he cares about Alana more than he even knows.
yeah.
He gives her that respect that no one else has up until this point.
More than what he, you would think he wants to just fuck this girl. No,
Yeah,
like this is
exactly.
someone he cares about. And I think I love most about that Sean Penn scene was exactly like seeing that Hollywood ideology, like seeing actors back then of like they would really just kind of like be these people in their own world. And you kind of see that with John Peters, even though he wasn't an actor. With the Bradley Cooper characters, like these guys were really masculine in their own world. They could care less about anybody else. And for me, the best part about that scene is whenever him and Tom Waits, uh, whenever they're having that conversation, Alana's sitting there. We are literally in her mind, as well as Gary's mind. But every time we're like sitting there at close-ups at that table, those two were just talking.
We have
Sean,
no idea what the hell they're talking about.
and somehow they came to it like they're just sitting there like, yeah, nah, yeah, I'm a good man. Well, yeah, we're gonna do it.
And I
Come on.
love how
It's
they
like,
talk, man. They're like,
yeah,
you can tell they're so wasted. They just
they
got like this just fucking long luscious macho man tone of just like
yeah,
the world has left them behind, but they're not ready to leave the world behind.
they just have this like weird ass dialogue. It literally, they are literally. If all you pay attention to that, which you're not supposed to, because you're not thinking about it, but if all you did was pay attention to their dialogue, they are
You have
literally
no idea what the hell was going on.
they're literally just saying words. They're not even like having they're literally just saying words. There is no real conversation, and somehow they come to the conclusion at the end like, yeah, I need some Everclear, and this is like, it's all the grease you got, meet me outside. Like, all like, you don't even know how the fuck they got there, because you're focused on Alana and Gary, and how right now
Alana's just
Alana's
trying
just
to
like,
piss off Gary, and then
yeah,
Gary's just trying to piss off Alana, and it's just like
Alana's
the whole
just like,
subtext of the scene. Yeah,
yeah, Alana's just like, you're a child. Look at me hanging out with Jack Holden or William Holden. Look at me. And Gary's just like, God, that's the girl of my dreams, my best friend. And now she's hanging out with famous people. What the fuck? I got to be cool. So he's like, I can get us martinis. You want to get martinis? Because he wants to be grown up for her. And she's just like, go sit there with your little kids looking at him. And that's why she just sticks her tongue out at him and does all that. Because she's just like, look at me. You're just a little kid. She literally constantly talks about that the entire movie. That's other critiques people says, like, for a movie that doesn't want to be provocative, they always talk about the age gap. I'm like, because it's not about the sexual tension. It's literally about a girl that doesn't realize that just because he's a kid doesn't mean that he can't bring more excitement to your life. And
yeah.
she constantly is like, that little kid, you're just a little kid, you're 15, you're 12, oh my god, like, I'm this old, constantly. But in reality, she's just like, God, he's actually really fun, he's actually a really good kid, he's fun, he's exciting, he'll
And
probably be something one day.
and you really realize that she's not trying to convince Gary of anything. She's trying to convince herself.
Yes, she's
That's
trying to
why
convince herself.
that's what you see with every single action and every single decision that she makes. She's trying to convince herself that it's not meant to be, but it always brings them back together, and they're always closer than before.
Always brings them running back together. Every single conflict with Alana,
I love it, man. I love whenever they first get arrested at the waterbed gallery. Oh
man,
it's explained to Sakibana for the first time, and he gets arrested for murder falsely, and just like
that dude, whenever they bring the guy out at the jail and they're like dragging him out to see Gary, and then he just stops. He's like, man, that's not him.
Man, that's not him. He drags him back.
That shit is so funny. It's so fucking hilarious.
But I mean, like, something that I've always loved is whenever Gary gets arrested, we see Alana chase after him, and you kind of wonder why. It's like, they know each other, but they don't know each other that well for her to be, that involved. He had his brother and he had, lifelong friends. None of them ran after him. None of them chased after him, but Alana did. And it's just, it's that endearing moment of like, okay, she won't admit it and she doesn't know it yet, but she loves this kid.
Yeah, she loves him. And as a friend, as someone that is important to her. And every time something bad happens, they come running to it. There's so much running in this film. That's a theme in and of itself. It's just crashing
running
into
towards
each
what
other.
You love. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful, symbolism of what this film is. And I think we glossed over one of her earlier interactions with a male. I forget his name, the actor's name.
Oh, the Jewish, the kid who isn't Jewish.
Yeah, I forget his name, but I think the actor's name is Skylar something.
Yeah, Skylar Gisondo.
Yeah, that he actually has a pretty funny moment on the beginning. PTA has like this amazing like shot of the flight attendant, and she's like being cute with Gary, and as soon as she walks away, you just see Skylar walk in the frame. It's really smooth cut. And he just stops and talks to Alana, and he's just like, hey, how are you? Like, being all sweet with them. And he's like, what'd you get to eat? And Gary's like trying to jump in and be like, you can talk to me too. And he introduces himself and says, who are you? And she's like, Alana. And then he just like looks at Gary, and the way he looks, he's just like, hey Gary, and just like
Yeah.
it's so funny because it's like he just doesn't give a fuck. He's like, fuck you, bro. I'm trying to talk to this girl right here.
Yeah, and dude, I remember I fucking immediately hated that character, man.
He's
And
so
then when
funny though.
he's so funny, but I'm like, dude, this guy fucking like he's that overconfident douchebag, and it's just so fucking funny.
Yeah.
And then whenever you cut to the dinner scene with Alana and her family, and just like, actually, I cannot partake in this prayer. I'm not Jewish. I think that
He's like, I'm
after
an
seeing all the
atheist.
violence, yeah, I'm an atheist. After seeing all the violence and just wrong in the world, I can't believe that there is God. And the dad's just fucking staring at him the entire time.
And then Alana just walks outside. Is like, do you have a
Let me see your-
penis?
Let me see your penis.
What size is your penis? Average. Then you're a fucking Jew. Some shit like, dude, it's so fucking funny.
Is your penis
man.
circumcised? Yeah. Then you're a fucking Jew.
Yeah, I think that's one thing as well about this movie. It's like, because it's so naturalistic and so like just being people, it's fucking hilarious. It's not, you don't feel like there's acting going on. I think someone had said it, part of the reason Alana Haim didn't get nominated for Best Actress, even though I think she should have. I think she probably is my favorite performance of the year for Best Actress, but they're just playing themselves, her and Cooper Hoffman, like they're just being themselves within these character limits, but there's no limits. They're just being themselves and having fun in 1970s San Fernando Valley, living this story, living this life. And it's like, it's so fucking hilarious to see them be who they are. Like Alana's family in the movie, that's her full family in real life. That's the Haim family, like the mom, dad, and the two sisters. That's her family. That is the Haim family. So it's really cool to see that. Cooper Hoffman's mom is in the movie. Paul Thomas Anderson's daughter is in the movie. His wife is in the movie. It's literally a family movie.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful. It's beautiful with these cameos. It's a family movie with all these no names. Maybe the Haims are famous. Obviously they're famous because of their music, but it's all this entire family of no names, and then with these interactions and cameos with these very famous people, Sean Penn, Bradley Cooper, Benny Safdie, like very very famous people that they're having these interactions with, and I love that.
And speaking of Benny Safdie, if we're talking about directors and storytellers that they use relatively no names for their actors, I think that the Safdie brothers, for both Good Time and Uncut Gems especially, which is using non-recognizable actors. Julia Fox at the time, I think that was her first major role.
Julia Fox now.
Yeah, Julia Fox. And then bringing Kevin Garnett is also the biggest name other than Adam Sandler, along with Lakeith Stanfield. But you look at Eric Bogosian, and then Keith William Richards, Mike Francesca, and then Adam Sandler's family, his children, Noah Fisher, and then Jonathan Arabadev. Bad with names, I'm sorry, but I think that there's sort of a similarity, and I think it adds to the authenticity to where whenever you look at these famous A-listers, oftentimes that's who you see. Like whenever you see Bradley Cooper, you're like, oh shit, that's Bradley Cooper. Sean Penn, that's Sean Penn. But with Cooper Hoffman and with Alana Haim, it's like we see these characters for who they are. They are these characters.
I had read something, I don't know if it's true or not, but I had read something that Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman had no idea Bradley Cooper was in the movie until the cameras are rolling and he showed up. That walk, man, let's just get into that scene. So after the Sean Penn scene, we get into this political moment of the the oil embargo. Like there's no more gas, so people can't drive anywhere. And this was actual thing in the 70s with Nixon as president in LA. It was really bad. Like no one had gas.
My parents grew up with that. Like my mom always told me stories about she and her family, they had to get up at the crack of dawn and drive to the gas station. Even then they could not guarantee that they get a full tank because of that embargo. Like that was like that was my parents' childhood, was that embargo growing up.
And it was like the tipping point into that scene was like after fucking around with Sean Penn and seeing the bullshit go on. Alana Haim kind of like starts talking to Gary and is like, do you even know what's going on? Do you even know like anything? And Gary's like, no. What do you and it just like reinforces like, damn, this is a kid. Like, fuck.
He doesn't pay attention to the
Yeah,
news. He doesn't know.
He doesn't pay attention. And so she tells him that their business with the water beds is pretty much dead because it's made out of fucking oil. Their material. So what leads to that is their business, the Soggy Bottom business, is dead, and they have one last buyer, and it's Bradley Cooper. So they drive, or John Peters, who Bradley Cooper plays, who's a real character. He was dating Barbara Streisand at the time.
Barbara Streisand.
Barbara Streisand, which leads to arguably what I would have considered Bradley Cooper should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor for just this small part. I do not care that it was one scene. Anne Hathaway can win Best Supporting Actress for Les Miserables for being in it for 10 minutes, and Lupita Nyong'o can for 12 Years a Slave for being in it for a few minutes. Bradley Cooper should have been in this conversation, should have been nominated. There was traction he could have, but this performance he puts on officially solidified him as in A-list. He is up there with DiCaprio because he really just came in and just fucking killed it.
Stole the show, man. He stole the show.
I just love the way that PTA introduces his character. It's literally just this bang, cut to him walking real fast. And this, you don't know who this is at all, unless you've seen the trailer. You know what he's wearing and what he looks like. But if you haven't seen the trailer, you don't know who it is. You're walking and you just see this guy and he's like, hey, can I talk to you? Can I talk? And he's just pissed off. Bam, you just cut to his face real quick. And then it's just started. And Bradley Cooper just goes on. He's like, I'm going to fucking kill you. Right. The best line he gives is Gary gives him an excuse. And Bradley Cooper's like, how big's your penis hole? Average size. Yeah, how come you say that? How do you think that would feel if I shoved that excuse up your penis hole? It's like, what the fuck?
Just fucking crazy and unhinged. And he has like this like weird yes, this like weird fixation of like, oh yeah, you know how I know you're real? Because I'm from the streets. I like this is my block. And it's just like he's trying to like just dominate, and like people are just like, dude, we don't care.
Yeah.
It's just
he just has this amazing setup. And so at the end of that like scene with him and Gary, he just like talks to him. He's just like, I'll kill your fucking brother in front of you. I'll fucking beat the shit out of him, and I'll kill you and all your family.
Died for a second.
Sorry about that. I'm too excited. But yeah, he's like pretty much just threatening Gary, and Gary's like freaked out. Alana's like, what the fuck? So John Peters tells him that he's just like, he's got to go. He's going to the movies. He's like, I got gas in my car. I'm getting to the movies. You're fucking late. Don't fuck up my house or I'll kill your family. So he leaves and goes off to the movies. So Gary and Alana sit there and they're like, he said he'll kill my brother in front of me. They just give each other this look. And Gary just says, fuck it. Releases a water hose that was building up the bed, puts it on his floor, and they dip. And then what ensues is probably my favorite shot.
Fucking hilarity.
My absolute favorite shot of the entire movie, and probably ever. I've never seen someone do a shot like, I'm sure it's happened in movies before, but this shot, they drive off and they're excited and happy, and then you just see like Alana Haim as she's driving, her face just drop as Gary's trying to tell this story, and Gary
is in the fucking distance, man. Yeah. Dude, I'm being for real. I think that he has not created this much tension within one scene since Boogie Nights.
Yeah, that rivals his Sister Christian scene. Like
it is. You're just like, fuck.
It just if you haven't seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking. There's just this one shot after he cut, like she stops the car. You're still like on their face. She stops the car and their faces of horror, and then it's quiet. There's no sound effects or anything after that. Immediate cut, and you just see this shot of John Peters, Bradley Cooper, look so small because he's walking up the street, but yet so large at the same time with the way he's walking. It is, you just can't help but bust out laughing because it's like, oh shit, he knows he's coming to beat their ass. And then you find out
Yeah,
he doesn't know.
And then I love, dude, I don't know. I just like, I love how sexual he made it whenever he's trying to scoot by his car and just leaning over Alana Hyman. He's whispering shit and just being like this fucking, just this typical fuck boy.
Yeah.
Just this piece of shit. And you love it so much, dude. I was dying whenever I was watching that scene.
Yeah, he's an amazing character. That acting that he puts on for that role, that scene is just top notch. Like
Yeah, dude.
because you just like the entire, like what you said, it's like so much tension in that scene. Like your heart is actually racing. It's like,
yeah, and then he ramps it up.
Yeah, like
PTA ramps it up immediately after. I'm sorry, I'll let you finish real quick.
I'm just running off of just, there's so much tension because you think that he knows, and then he gets in a car and he asks them,
he doesn't.
You realize he doesn't. So then the whole time you're thinking, when is he going to find out? Inevitably something's going to happen. And then it just keeps going and going. So then he takes them to the gas station and Bradley Cooper freaks out. And then Alana and Gary leave after they drop him off.
That's my favorite scene, man. I love it whenever like they have that idea and they come back and they're like, okay, fuck this guy. And they drive up to his car, which is out of gas, just laying in the street, and they beat the shit out of his windshield.
And as Gary's the engine cuts. Yeah, as Gary's beating the windshield, having the time of his life, the engine cuts and Alana's face just, oh fuck. And Gary hops in the car and she's like, it's out of gas, push the car. And he's like, well, shut the fuck up, get it. And it's like,
this is like my second or my third watch. I took my girlfriend to go see it. And I mean, I've been hyping that movie up to her, and I was like, dude, you need to watch this. And I remember I was sitting next to her, and the second you hear that engine stop, her jaw just dropped. She was on the edge of her seat, and I'm like, dude, I don't think there's one director who's able just to create an oh fuck moment. It just palpable tension throughout an entire scene to where it does not end. Like that shit, it felt like a horror movie. I was ready for these characters to die from John Peters.
As like funny as that scene is, that I was telling people, I'm like, that scene is literally like, that is the masterclass in tension. Like I don't think you cannot build tension better than that. Like you just can't.
It's so classic, man.
And it's 10 minutes. That's it.
I mean, you have the setup with John Peters, who's like, he wants to be this tough guy, and he's talking all this talk, and he's saying to Cooper Hobbins' face, I will kill you and your brother. I will kill everybody that you know and love if you fuck up my carpet. They fuck up his carpet. Yeah. And then they think that they get away with murder. And then make the choice to fuck up his windshield and screw themselves even further. And you're just like, oh my God. You just, dude, I love it. I love it. But I mean, like, even just, John Peters, what his character represents for the story, I love that sexual tension because, again, it's looking at relationships from surface level. I mean, you see that John Peters is clearly interested in Alana Haim, but, not for romantic or, any reason deeper than the fact that he wants to fuck her. And it's gross. It plays into sort of this masculinity. I think that if there is going to be one general theme other than finding relationships that work and don't work, it's women having to deal with the world that is truly masculine, especially in this time, and having to deal with it. It's him and Sean Penn, they really highlight that theme to a T. And there's a throwaway line that John Peters said that I really liked, is whenever he's helping Alana Haim drive the car past his car, is like he brings up Barbara Streisand, and he says it in passing, but it's like he's like, I mean, it's like I want to like it, like I try to make it work, and like it fits on paper. And you're just like, damn. I mean, like I think that he genuinely wants to love Barbara Streisand, and he feels like he should, but he doesn't. I mean, he's a free spirit. He wants to fuck every little thing that he can.
And
it makes him unhappy. And
it shows at the end of that scene, because Alana is kind of like, she's like, that's her next like moment, is like, I gotta stop hanging out with these kids after this like escapade happens, and like her life almost ended because she had to drive backwards. And they were doing something dangerous, and she's like, these kids are really having the time of their life.
They had no idea that their lives could have ended like that.
and it's kind of like that moment of like, damn, is Gary really, should I really be around him? And she realizes like she shouldn't. But at the end of that scene, like she notices a sign for running for mayor or whatever. But at the end of that scene, before we cut to that, is Bradley Cooper like freaked out, it tosses a trash can into a building and just pissed off. He is an angry man, and he walks past and out of frame because we're just holding on Alana this wide shot while she's sitting down. And then these two beautiful women walk by.
And you just see him immediately do a 180.
Yeah, he
and
just
turn
like
around.
does a 180, and like the way he runs up to them, he just asks like, "Hey, you like PB&J sandwiches?" It's like, what the fuck?
I don't know, just the way that he constructed that, especially just I guess the beats is I love how you see him throw a trash can in just this one shot and he walks off screen without cutting.
Yeah.
And two beautiful women walk by, they walk off screen, there's just a beat where it's just Lana,
Yeah.
and then you see Bradley Cooper run by. So you like PB&J sandwiches?
But
it's funny, man. It's so funny.
That shit is funny. And what leads from that is Alana's like realization of like, damn, I really got to get my life together. Like I'm really fucking around too much. And so she goes to go help out for the local
election.
Is he running for mayor or
he's running for?
I think he's running.
I want to say it's governor. I know it's an actual.
It's for the town, just for the town.
I need to look it up. I know that it's
not governor for sure.
I know that it's based off a real dude who was actually closeted.
Yeah, it's actually Joel Wax. But like that's the name of the guy and the character in the movie.
Oh, president of city council. That's what it was.
Yeah, city council. So that kind of ensues into, one final showdown between Alana and Gary that is actually kind of emotional and kind of like, damn, like she kind of just pesters him into it's her final showdown with him that's like, you're a fucking child, don't smoke that cigarette, you're gonna die because you're a kid, constantly beating into his head that he's a kid. Well, he's just taking it, he's just like, I am a man.
Mm-hmm.
I am a man, I am good enough for you, I am good enough. And she's like, you're not cool enough. She literally tells him like, you're not cool, you're not cool.
Specifically, you'll never be as cool as me.
Yeah.
And
because he's a kid, and she's trying to tell herself that she should not be around him, trying to tell him that she should not be around him because he is a kid.
Something that I love so much about just the subtext of that scene is it's so clearly obvious that Paul Thomas Anderson, he wanted Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman to approach the scene like they were, an old married couple. It's like you could see that there was the history that they have, and that there's a love that's still there, but it's dwindling because they think that they want different things from each other out of life and that they're in different stages. And it's just, it feels like there's almost regret for Alana, like she's wasted her time because she doesn't know. And then Gary realizes that she will never have this respect for me, or, so he thinks. And so whenever he, starts smoking cigarettes and drives off, even though he's 15 and doesn't know how to drive, it's just him trying to prove something not to himself, but to her.
Yeah.
It's all in the subtext. And I mean, I really want to talk about, Joel Walk's character and the entire setup for it, man. It's fucking amazing. Because whenever I first watched it, I think that it was obvious that most people felt the same way. Is it felt like Joel Walk's like his character of how, whenever he's being interviewed, that he wasn't dating anybody and that he hadn't found the love of his life, and that possibility was going to be for Alana Haim. And Alana's character definitely thought the exact same thing. And then you see the guy with the camera outside and he keeps taking photos, and it's so eerily reminiscent of Taxi Driver.
He wasn't taking photos. He was just kind of sitting there watching.
Just sitting there. I'm sorry, but just sitting there trying to catch him in the act, trying to see him leave with his boyfriend at the time. And I mean, like, yeah, it reminded me so much of Taxi Driver, with especially whenever Alana was talking with her old school friend. Do you know the character's name? I don't remember if they even mentioned it.
Who are you talking about? Oh, Alana Haim's old friend.
Yeah, old friend.
Brian.
Brian. Yeah, Brian. Yeah, whenever she's in with Brian, it reminded me so much, man, of whenever we first meet Betsy and you see Travis Bickle just standing outside, just being a creep. And
Yeah,
whenever you watch it from Alana's point of view, for Taxi Driver, it made that scene feel so much creepier because now you're just like, damn, there is this dude staring, and it's not staring for Alana, he's staring for Joel Walks, but still, it feels so just creepy and
yeah,
out of place. And then you find out why, and just the rug is pulled out from underneath the audience and Alana. Whenever that we discover Joel Walks, he is gay,
yeah,
and you see he's in a fractured relationship with his husband because you know the most important thing about that relationship is, or the most important thing for Joel is how the public views him. It's his career. Is he doesn't allow himself to be happy because he thinks that that happiness comes from success rather than the people who love him the most. And I mean, that's the biggest hammer in the nail for Alana's character and the audience is if something fits, don't run away from it because you're just gonna end up bitter, sad, and alone.
yeah,
It's a failed relationship, and it's people who have failed themselves and failed each other in life, and it's haunting. That scene was genuinely haunting for me
yeah,
to know that they're gonna continue to try to make it work, but they'll never be happy.
yeah. I like that you put it that way because it's like she sees Joel Wax as this guy who she can either be with or someone that's important. Like that's a smart guy. And then she finds out who he really is, why he called her to have a drink. Um, and she finds out that he too is hiding who he is for public perception. Um, and it's the final nail in the coffin for her to be like, okay, Gary gives me happiness. I'm not going to live my life shitty because he's 10 years younger. Like,
Yeah.
and again, like, it's not, there's like no, to me, like, there's no inappropriate relationship in this. And that's why I kind of like, I've always said, like, if there's one knack with the movie that I don't like, is the fact that they kiss at the end because I don't see it that way. But I don't, whenever they kiss, I don't even see it as like a love kiss, like you're going to be my girlfriend, I'm your boyfriend. Like, I see it as just like this kid who's just like, finally, I'm gonna just take my shot, just fuck it. And she just kind of like takes and she's like, fine, we'll do this one time and then move on. Like, it's kind of like how a kid, you're 12 years old and you have to have a babysitter and she's fucking 18, 19 years old. And all you want to do is your babysitter is to be with your babysitter. It's like, it's one of those type of things. It's like, they're your friend, but they also are someone that brings happiness to your life, someone that's been around you that
Mhm.
can give you. And for Alana, that is what Gary is. And for Gary, Alana is someone that he definitely is like, I met my future wife. Like he has this affection towards her. And that's kind of what PTA had said is he came up with the idea like 20 years ago because he saw some kid hitting on an older woman. And he was like, that's a great story. Because that's what Gary is. He is that inner kid in all of us. It's like every male I feel like can attest. It's like, okay, you've seen a beautiful teacher, you've seen a beautiful woman. We've had crushes on older celebrities. We have crushes on older our best friend's older sister, things like that. Like you can't say that you haven't had that type of crush on someone. And then to see that type of movie where it's like, damn, he's really just a pimp. He talking to her like he's got the most game in the world. And it's like, as he goes on in the movie, he doesn't really try to be with her because he recognizes that she can't. He tries to be her friend until in the very end, he's just like, I can't live without you. This isn't
Mhm.
exciting to open up this pinball store without you. Everything is pissing me off without you. I was with that girl earlier to piss you off, but now it's just like I can't. You are my best friend. And for her it's the same. It's like they realize, and that's why they run crashing into each other. We shouldn't be apart. And the age gap is only conflict. That's all it is. There's
Yeah. I
nothing
mean,
else.
I'll be honest, I'm glad that they kissed because for me it felt cathartic in the way that they admitted their love for each other. I know that, I honestly, if the film were to continue forward, I would see them still, they are friends rather than boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
But it's fine. That's what we've been waiting for. The entire movie is, not will they make it work? It's will they admit that they love each other? And the
Yeah.
most visual and the most emotional way to do that is through physical contact, especially through a kiss. It's
Yeah.
nothing sexual. It's nothing, deeper than just love. And I mean, I don't see them dating
Yeah, no.
with the next day, but I mean, I can see, once Cooper gets older, or once Gary Valentine he gets older, and he's more mature, then yeah, I think so. I could see them ending up together, just not presently.
Yeah.
And that was the whole point of the film. It's, they're people that are who are meant to be with each other, just not right now.
Yeah.
And to accept that that's okay.
But even
That
then, it's the symbolism of the title. It's like Licorice Pizza. If you want to look into it, it's like two things that
shouldn't go together.
shouldn't go together, but at the same time, it actually
It sounds
sounds
perfect.
pretty cool. Licorice Pizza, like that sounds gross, but also it sounds really cool. It's like two people that shouldn't be together, but yet it works so well, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is. And she can't. All the people that are her age or older, or men, treat her horribly. And then you have this little kid who hits on her all the time, treats her right, and just has fun.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
I
it.
mean, something that I sort of like, especially with Alana's catharsis at the end of the film, is this entire time she's searching for purpose and drive and placement in life, and she doesn't realize that she's already found it,
Yeah.
that she's already doing stuff that she cares about because she is genuinely happy.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of relationship films I've noticed, they focus on sort of the conflicts of relationships with how they aren't necessarily happy with each other. I mean, like, two big ones that stick out in my mind that have impacted me is Revolutionary Road and Marriage Story. And it's like they're good love stories, but there's something that's so refreshing just to focus on people who are happy and
Yeah.
are okay with that. It doesn't matter if they get together or not. It's the fact that they spend time with each
Yeah.
other. That's what matters.
And I think a argument that some people have brought to me that is like, why can't he just make the characters the same age? Like, what's the difference? I'm like, there is a difference because
There's a nuance to it.
if you make them around the same age, we've seen that movie before. And it's all about originality. And it's like what you said earlier. It's like the age gap creates conflict. It creates a pull in for the audience. It's like, will they want though? It's like, this isn't right. And it's like, you haven't seen that before. But if they're the same age, you've seen that before. And there's really like, it was really interesting to have that kind of conflict in the movie. It's like, they shouldn't be together, but why is it working so well?
Mm-hmm.
Why? And you just want to keep rolling with these characters, and that's what it's about. Is you just keep falling into it. Um, so after all that, I absolutely love that film. Again, I it's probably one of my favorite films, if not my favorite film this past decade. Um, I think in talking about PTA, like we talked about Tarantino, I think again, you have his best movie, and then you have your favorite. I think my favorite, it's hard for me to say this. My favorite has always been Boogie Nights. And I think it might still be. But Licorice Pizza and Boogie Nights is like, but I think Licorice Pizza right now is my favorite. I could just be riding a high from it, and maybe 2 years from now, I'll think differently. Um, but for me, his best movie, and it depends on who you talk to. There, it will be between There Will Be Blood and The Master, but for me, I think his best movie is The Master.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think it's his absolute best movie. I think, and he even came out and said that he's like, it's tough that I just made this because it's like you can't really get higher than this. And it's kind of like the argument I always make against for Jordan Peele. It's like the reason why Us wasn't like didn't hit that well is because Get Out, he reached so high on his first movie, which is like, damn, dude, you have something that I don't think you can ever top. And that was your first movie, and that can hurt his career. But luckily to Paul Thomas Anderson, The Master, for me, his best movie came at his seventh movie with The Master. And it really, like you could say There Will Be Blood, you could say The Master. It really is apples and oranges between what's his best. But my favorite for me, I'm gonna say Licorice Pizza at this point. Um, yeah, I don't I don't think I don't think that he's made a more personal film in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think this is it. I think this is the one that he had the most fun with, that he had the most excitement making, even though it was during COVID. Everything just clicked, and it was a family film. Like all of his movies are very personal,
Mhm.
but this one was a family film, and it just, you felt it was there. Like, not a movie that a family should go see, but it had this nuance and this perfection in this care in the story and the characters that I just hadn't seen in any of his other movies. But
Yeah.
that's what I'm gonna go with.
Um, yeah, for me, I'd have to say my favorite is definitely Magnolia.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a movie. It stuck with me for days, just like Licorice Pizza did after I saw it, with just, how emotional and cathartic it was. I love movies that are able to successfully hit on, a catharsis. And this movie did it like four times with just character interactions. Everybody had a story to tell, and it all interweaved and connected. And that's something that Paul Thomas Anderson is so good at. And you're absolutely right. Like, if we're going to talk about his best movies, it's interchangeable between There Will Be Blood and The Master. And I think that that's his best films with cinematography as well. He's mastered this entire, look for his films. And I mean, it's always been throughout his entire career, but he really perfected it with There Will Be Blood, and then The Master. He just somehow took to it the next level.
yeah,
And it's just like, for me, There Will Be Blood. It felt like, 60s cinematography, especially with old westerns, and then with The Master, it's like this cohesion between golden age Hollywood and modern cinema with cinematography.
yeah.
I mean, it was amazing throughout. The Master, though, I'd have to agree. I think that that's his best work. I mean, it's perfect in every way.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember it was such a trip discovering Paul Thomas Anderson, because I think that that was the first time that I, focused on a director who was just truly character driven stories.
Yeah.
It was, don't follow the plot, don't think about themes, just sit down for the ride
Yeah.
and enjoy it.
I think that's important because, like, a lot of people will look at There Will Be Blood and be like, that's an anti-capitalist movie, which it is, and those themes are there. But I mean, in reality, if you just follow those characters, it's about a father and a son and this man who just is evil, and
Yeah.
it's so crazy to see him follow. And it's like, that's another reason why, like, I can really love his movies the most, because he really just writes characters, and his themes can be whatever you want them to be. He has his own themes, but he writes these characters in a way that's like, you can think of whatever it is that you find in this film through these characters. Everyone has something different to say about each one, but everyone comes to the same conclusion. It's like, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And then you have, I mean, there are obviously people that don't like his movies. I'm not gonna say everyone, but he is considered like our day and age Martin Scorsese. Like, he is right there. And I think a reason why we chose these two movies, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Licorice Pizza, is simply because Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson are our generation's, millennials, Gen Z, our generation's, like, Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola, or Hitchcock and Kubrick, and all, like, they are the two working
They're
directors.
titans of industry.
Yeah,
And
they're the two working directors that literally are making movies that just are timeless. You just
and
can't.
something that I love so much about these two directors in particular is they acknowledge each other, each other's greatness, and there's sort of that friendly competition
Yeah,
and drive between one another. I mean, they set it by their own admission that whenever one of them releases a film, they're like, okay, how can I do something similar but top it? And
yeah,
so, like, whenever you look at There Will Be Blood and Inglorious Bastards, how Hans Landa was inspired by Daniel Plainview. And at first I was like, how? And I start rewatching, I'm like, now I'm starting to get it. It's, they're just as charismatic as they are evil.
yeah,
And it's just these despicable characters, but you can't help but love them. And then I think the most obvious one in recent memory is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then it was followed by Licorice Pizza.
Yeah.
It's
And
it's
some might say Inherent Vice and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I could see it, but I don't think that they would pair as well as Licorice Pizza and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
yeah,
Uh, but I will say, Inherent Vice is growing on me. I was at the
same.
thought of it whenever I first saw it, I was like, what the fuck was that? But again, people have their own different interpretation of what that film is. And that's what makes it so special. It's I put in like some of my reviews on Letterbox, with especially There Will Be Blood and Inherent Vice. I was like, don't try to figure it out when you watch these movies. Just enjoy it.
Enjoy.
Because if you sit there and you try to figure it out, you'll never get an answer. Because
Yeah,
there's not an answer. It's what
Espe-
you think about.
especially with how nuanced Paul Thomas Anderson tells his stories and how
Yeah.
many layers he adds to it. You'll never get a single definitive answer. I mean, I think that his movies, his characters, especially with their motivations, they can be just as inconsistent and pragmatic as real people. I mean,
Yeah.
he creates true, genuine people to where they can contradict themselves and they can, you know, they can be as evil as they are endearing.
Yeah.
And that's just this is what makes it poetic. It's especially what highlights this conflict in Licorice Pizza between Cooper Hoffman and Alana Haim. It's, there's a juxtaposition between the relationship and why or why not it should fit. And it feels like on paper it doesn't until you sit down and watch it, and it does.
Yeah.
It's what makes watching him be so endearing and so lovable, and why you can just watch him all day, every day.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And I know we cheated a little bit with this. We didn't watch this technically as a double feature, these two movies back to back or within the same 2 days. But these movies are imprinted in our brain. So that's why it was very easy for us to start off with these two movies. But I gotta say, like, I've had a lot of fun talking about these two. Like, I felt like we were about to go on and on about Licorice Pizza, man. Like,
I know.
it was tough. Like, even with Once Upon a Time, like, it was tough for me to stop.
I just happened to look at the time. I'm like, damn, we're already over
Yeah,
3 hours deep into this
yeah.
podcast.
I was
My
like,
dad-
this is exciting. Like, and I can't
it
wait to do
is.
more. Something that we're gonna do also, in this podcast, because I think we're gonna wrap it up with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Licorice Pizza as our two pairings. Something else that we want to do is kind of like, we want to promote movie watching and movie going. Go to the theaters and watch more movies. As Sorry, getting a phone call. We want to promote this, and something that I think is important is kind of just also have a slight conversation about what you've been doing. Like, what have you been watching? If you haven't been watching, I recommend trying to watch a movie or a show or an episode or read something every day, or even write something. If you're a content creator, do something every day. But especially for this type of podcast, we're watching something every day, and we'll definitely take y'all's emails and messages and whatever suggestions on what you've been watching and trying to interact with the audience. But Jacob, I want you to tell the audience and me what you've been watching, man. I'm interested.
What I've been watching. Well, obviously, I'm getting ready for the Oscars. So I've been trying to catch up. I'm definitely watching Power of the Dog. Either later tonight after we record our second episode,
Yeah.
or tomorrow at the very least. But I watched Corpse Bride for the first time in like a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Along with Pride and Prejudice a little while back. But the reason why I paired those two together is because my girlfriend, those are her two favorite movies, and I think Pride and Prejudice fits in perfectly because it's let me get refamiliarized with Joe Wright before I watched Cyrano,
Mm-hmm.
which I love. I watched Doodlebug, Chris Nolan's first short film for the first time. That's
What?
just yeah, for the first time, man.
Oh
I was
wow.
like, dude, it's been like I feel like I should have watched this ages ago. I haven't. I'm gonna go ahead and watch it.
Yeah.
I can see that David Lynch in him so much, man. How he wants to create these cerebral and surrealist
Yeah.
films with whatever he does. I also
Yes.
watched Cigarettes and Coffee. I was on just a little bit of a short film binge. So I
Yeah.
watched Paul Thomas Anderson's short film. And even as he was 22, I believe, whenever he did this, it's amazing for what he did at his age. People, I
Yeah,
mean, like he has that classic film student dialogue where like, they sort of talk about nothing and try to make it more than what it is, but like I don't give a shit. It's still interesting.
yeah,
I love it. It's amazing. I watched Wes Craven Scream for the first time too. Never seen Scream before. I watched it, fucking loved it.
yeah. I think something cool about that Cigarettes and Coffee was even Philip Baker Hall, who's in that movie. He had said there's a quote where he's like, exactly what he was like. It was dialogue that was like iffy here and there. Could tell he was learning. He was like, but you knew while you were reading this that you were in the hands of a master. It was like, wow,
Yes.
this dude's like 22 years old. Paul Thomas Anderson is like a legend. Philip Baker Hall is talking about him as a legend. So that's pretty
Like,
cool.
dude, like what I wanted to do with a Brothers Vanity 2 years ago, just to create something that, create an entire story that feels like it could be a feature and do it within 20
Yeah,
minutes. Like that's what I wanted to do. And he successfully did it. And especially to
yeah,
do it at that time whenever, cinema resources like cameras and audio and lighting, it's not as readily available. It's so dope that he did.
yeah. Uh, let's see. So while we were snowed out, I watched two directors this year so far. Christopher Nolan and Quentin Tarantino, kind of like revamping, the year of like I haven't seen their movies in a while. As you can see, I have the Tenet poster right there. Um, so I was watching that, and um, I've been reading a lot more lately. I read a book called Killing Eve, which is a show. I'm gonna watch it soon with my roommate because he's reading the book right now, and then I'm also reading Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So I've been reading a lot. Uh, I watched a lot of movies. If you look at my letterbox, I've watched 40 movies this year. If that doesn't sound like a lot, but it kind of is
That
because
is a lot for the second month.
yeah, for the second month, because there's 31 days in January, and then now we're on day 15 in February. So I've almost at that mark of one movie a day. I kind of slowed down last week and didn't watch anything last week. I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
So last
This
night,
month, or
yeah,
sorry,
last night I just went to the theater after work and just watched Licorice Pizza again because I wanted to, and I might do the same tonight and go check out a movie that I haven't seen at the theater.
this year I'm a little disappointed in myself. I mean, the
We're
audience
busy. We're
doesn't
busy. We're busy.
the audience doesn't know this, might knows this. I got into a car wreck last January. I started off January with a pretty good start. I think I was like 14 films deep by January 20th. And then I got into the car wreck and it sort of changed my priorities for a little bit. And
Yeah,
now that my life's getting back to normal and I'm starting to get my plans figured out for how I'm going to continue out this year, I'm ready to start hopping back and watching movies regularly and studying. But
yeah,
I've just been itching, but I'm like, damn, I got a lot of shit I need to make sure I get in order. And
yeah,
so I'm mad at myself. I mean, like you can always fit in a movie if you want to,
yeah,
and I haven't, but I mean, I'm ready to hop back in and watch as
yeah.
many movies as possible, man.
Watch as many as possible. Also, go to the theaters. I'm a very big movie theater guy. Um, if I have the opportunity to watch a movie in theaters, I will. Like I have The Godfather. I have my tickets to go see Godfather in theaters whenever it releases for the 50th anniversary. I'm excited, but that's a huge thing. If I'm gonna be a spokesperson for Warner Brothers, go get your Batman tickets. Go get them because that's important. Um, I know we have COVID going on, but also after we just saw the Super Bowl, 100,000 people in that stadium, maskless and everything. Um, I understand. Be safe. Get vaccinated. Get your mask on. Whatever helps you. But also, movies need our support this year. We need what we did for Spider-Man. Please, 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 please go support movies this year. Like I it's super important. It's super
Mhm.
important for the
I don't
excitement,
I
and
don't think that people truly understand, the impact that filmmaking has on culture and sort of development and thought. I mean, some of the first, greatest developments, especially in philosophical and ethical thinking, uh, it a lot of it was not necessarily started, but it was helped develop through cinema, through people's introspective thought, and to give it to an audience. The film is the greatest way to, you know, explore the human insight in modern day.
Yeah.
And it's something that deserves to be highlighted and respected. That's why people talk about cinema as highly as they do, because once you understand the impact that it has on people and the impact that it has on culture, um, it's something that you never want to see hindered like it has been due to COVID.
Yeah. And I think we'll get back. But with that, this has been a fun episode about
Absolutely.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Licorice Pizza. Thanks to Jake Deering and to our producer Samantha Sampson. Next episode, we'll be discussing Taxi Driver and Zodiac. I'm excited.
Me too, man.
All right. See y'all next time.
With that, see you later.